Hey, guys, I'm back. I'm back. Thank y'all for being patient with me, child. I had to go get my child and feed him and all the stuff that you got to do as a mama child. But we are back to get these last final chapters done. We got two more and we're going to breeze through and then we're going to talk about it a little bit. Hell, I might even do a panel. I don't know. Because this book is very, very juicy. All right. There's a lot of things, a lot of elements, and a lot of layers in this damn story. Like, Jesus. Okay. Y'all, pardon me. I'm off camera because I'm decided to come downstairs, honey, so I can relax on my bed as I read to y'all. I hope y'all don't mind, okay? Hope y'all don't mind. I want to be relaxed, y'all. Sitting up in that damn chair, reading. No God. All right, but let's get into it. Chapter 9. Of course, everything said in the video is alleged and in my opinion and is used for fair use and entertainment. All right. They say yes, catching another live. Yes, Bridget J, honey. We are back for this good old book, girl. All right, let's go. All right, 3 months into my sentence at Pulaski State Prison, and I was called into the counselor's office. They notified me that I was being shipped off to another prison. Lee Arendelle State Prison had just been converted into a co-ed prison, and I was included in the first shipment of women ever to reside there. This didn't pose a problem or a threat to me. I felt that I was moving into a different environment and also moving closer to home. Lee Arendelle was the biggest prison I'd ever seen. I thought Pulaski was big, but Lee Arendelle was much bigger. As a prisoner, you walked everywhere you went. At this facility, the only car that you had the luxury of riding in was the patrol car. It was with certainty that prisoners rode in the back seat. Walking was good enough. I would be in great physical shape by the time of my release. My new home consisted of nothing more than hills and concrete. The staple diet was peanut butter and syrup sandwiches. Yuck. Getting acclimated and blending into my new surroundings was now my focus. I was living with an entirely new group of women, and I was in the midst of a whole new flock. These women didn't even know me, and they didn't know my character. I didn't want them to get offended by my nonchalant attitude. Certainly, I didn't need anybody thinking that I was a snob because I didn't play along with their games. There wasn't much time for games in this new existence, and I had my whole life ahead of me. I only lived at Lee Arendelle State Prison for 8 weeks before I was called to see the chaplain. I thought, oh, hell no, not again. But in my mind, I was hoping for the best while preparing for the worst. I knew that someone had died. I just didn't know who it was. Waiting for 2 hours outside the chaplain's office, I was on the brink of insanity. I kept praying to God that nothing had happened to any of my children. When the chaplain finally walked in, he brought coldness through the door with him. He sat down on his chair, kicked his feet up, and turned over the paper lying face down on his desk. When the chaplain flipped the paper over, in the top right corner, it read name of deceased. In the space next to my grandmother's name, Annie Kate Milling Shug, if we were waiting to hear that, I caused a scene and acted all dramatic, then you were waiting in vain. That never happened. I showed absolutely no reaction. There were no words or tears. I simply got out of my seat, walked out of his office, and went back to my cell. I was emotionless and felt completely numb. The loss of my mother had also traumatized me so that death itself no longer affected me. Death had lost its sting. My maternal lifeline was wiped out. My grandmother was my strong point, and we connected after I lost my mother. But now both my mother and grandmother were gone. I knew for sure that I was on my own. My family members didn't invite me to the funeral. That didn't bother me either because I didn't want to go anyway. I was through with death. I swore that for the next funeral that I would never attend, I swore that the next funeral that I would attend would be my own. Since I didn't attend my mother's funeral, I learned that I lived without them. I sat on my bunk thinking about my grandmother, but my heart had gone cold. I even tried to make myself cry, and nothing happened. My mind was now focused on my children. My grandmother was unalive, so was theirs. This was the worst nightmare ever. I made myself believe that I was stuck inside of my dreams with no way out. How else could I deal with reality? Well, I couldn't, so I created my own. When I crawled out of the hellhole of my life would then return normal. The following day, I was called to the counselor's office. To my surprise, this visit came with good news. I learned that I finally had a release date with the parole system. My date was set for September of 2005. That was only 6 weeks away. I had no clue as to exactly which day, September, but just knowing that it was September was good enough for me. This had been a long, painful, tiresome journey, and I was without question broken. There was no sense in kicking a dead horse, right? I couldn't be punished anymore for my crimes, and I had been punished long enough. I had lost some things that would never be returned, and I had learned my lesson the hardest way possible. Those 6 weeks were the longest of my life. The minutes felt like hours, and the hours crawled along like days. I drew a calendar and I hung it on the wall with toothpaste. This was a constant reminder of how many days that I had left until I was out of this hellhole. I had been through, overcome, and survived the worst of it. Everything from here on out would completely be uphill. And I do mean uphill. I can remember sitting and brooding with my thoughts for hours. Life would be harder once I was released. In prison, I didn't have my children, and I didn't have any bills to pay. However, I was constantly thinking of my children and how they would receive me. Would I be welcomed with open arms? Would they resent me? Amani didn't know her mother at all. She was 18 months and had lived her entire life without me. My baby boy, Javion rather, was with his father. It was obvious that my son's father hated me. He had three faces: a Capricorn who wore grudges like the shirt on his back. Slim never got past the day that he caught me with drama. And I won't forget it either. That was the day that he sent me into exile. 2 months before my mother passed away, I was surprised when I received court papers in the mail. My son's father had gotten me good, I guess. I never suspected he would stoop so low. The abandonment papers were from a magistrate state court of Fulton County. I was the defendant and Slim was the plaintiff. But wait, that wasn't the shocking part of it all. The shock came when I read the letter that was written by my mother. It stated, "I can no longer care for my grandson, Javion Stanton, due to health issues. So I give full care and custody over to his father." The letter was signed Joan Milling. This was devastating because my mother had never discussed this with me. There were other options. She knew my son's father, and I had a love-hate relationship. Why would she give him my son? Just like some females, he would only use my son as a pawn. I knew that without a doubt. And I remember leaving the mailroom on that fateful day and calling home. My mother, like she always did, accepted the call on the first ring. When I asked her about the letter, she was just as surprised as I was. She told me to look at the letter carefully because it wasn't her signature or her handwriting. I examined the letter and it was not her writing at all. So I sent her a copy of the paperwork and she went to the court on my behalf. My mother explained to the judge that the letter was forged. Her actions had prevented me from losing parental rights of custody of Javion. The judge ruled that just because I was incarcerated didn't mean that I was an unfit parent. This fool Slim had forged my mother's name, told the courts that I had abandoned my son, and that they had no clue as to where I was. Not only that, he asked the judge to grant him sole custody and to terminate any and all visitation rights. He knew damn well that I was in prison the whole time. The devil is a liar. But getting back to the story, my mother, two sons were with my aunt, Carrie, my mother's oldest sister. I was just anxious about reuniting with my children and being a family again. It was on my mind, true enough, but I wasn't concerned about where we lived or how we would survive. I had Phaedra, and the book was already written. I'd done the part. All I had to do now was to get it typed and hand it to her. In the meantime, I was sure that she would assist me in finding a job. The biggest hurdle now was getting released. September 1st, 2005 was my release date. I knew I was leaving because the night before they had already told me to pack up my belongings and move me to segregation. The prison officials always sent you to segregation the night before you were to be released to reduce confusion. I couldn't sleep that whole entire night. I stared through that narrow window in my cell, looking up at the stars and the moon in the sky. My eyes were wide open, searching for my mother the entire night. Mommy, I know you're up there somewhere, and I know that you've been watching over me. I'm walking out of this prison in the morning, a woman and a mother. I have been blessed with a second chance at life, but this time, Mom, I'm going to be different. I'm going to turn my negative into a positive. I'm going to give back, and I'm going to help heal the world, Mom. I promise, Mom. I promise you. I promise. I prayed and I made a covenant with my mother before I left that prison. And as I walked past those iron gates, I dedicated my life to fulfilling that promise I made to my mother. My brother Lee waited outside alone in his truck. He had returned to the States for good. After his basketball contract ended, I don't think that he had a desire to ever be that far away from his family again. Neither one of us was there the day that our mother died. My brother had to bury our mother on his own. Just like I didn't have him, he didn't have me either. In our entire life, we had been raised close to one another. It was constantly drilled into our heads that we were all each other had in this world. It felt good to be free. The air was different, and for some reason, the sun seemed to shine a bit brighter. But no matter how much I tried to enjoy my freedom, I had nothing to be happy about. All that time I spent in prison, I survived by making myself believe that my mother and grandmother were going to be waiting for me. I had not fooled anyone but myself. It was time for me to face reality. I was on my way to pick up my children. As much as I didn't want to believe it, the truth was that neither my mother or grandmother was going to be there. I knew that I had to fight this head on. So without any hesitation, I asked my brother to take me to our mother's grave. I needed to come to terms with what was going on, and I wanted to get over the devastation of never seeing my mother again. I needed to do this before I came in contact with my children, and that's exactly what I did. I stood at my mother's graveside with my brother. My mother was beneath the ground, but we finally had our moment. I saw the headstone with my mother's name on it, and I just knew then that it was over. I cried until I made myself sick. My brother carried me from the grave and drove me around until I got myself together. Later that day, we arrived at 306 Ormond Street in Atlanta, Georgia. This was home to me, my mother, my grandmother, and so many other people in the family. Like a dried up desert, my grandmother's home stood, nothing like I remembered. It was clear that my grandmother's presence was obsolete. My grandmother purchased her home in 1955, and in the 50 years later, in the 50 years that she had this home in her possession, none of her utilities were ever disconnected. And she had the same telephone number ever since Bell South was established. The first thing that I noticed was that the lights were disconnected. Then I noticed that there was no running water, and the phone was off, and the gas was disconnected as well. The house was filthy and infested with spiders. I looked at my oldest two boys, Laquan and Leonte. They were very happy to see their mother. I couldn't imagine for the life of me what type of life they had grown accustomed to. Their clothes were 3 sizes too small, and their shoes were old, beaten up, and dirty. My baby girl, Imani, was running all over the house barefoot. My baby didn't even have a single pair of shoes in her possession. I wasn't angry and I wasn't ungrateful. I just felt like they deserved more than that. I was trying my best to make myself comfortable with my present situation. I knew my aunt did the best that she could with what she had, but it was just such a cheerlessly and sad homecoming. I tried as hard as I could, but I could not stay in that house. With my grandmother gone, it appeared that my crackhead cousin had taken over. All types of people were in and out of that house at all times of the day and night. Complete strangers stood over me while I slept. I couldn't take it. There was no way that I was going to live there, not with my children. Everything that I looked at, everything that I touched, and everything that I heard reminded me of my mother and grandmother being gone. This was home, not the same place it was before I went to prison. I packed up what little we had and we left. My youngest son's father, Slim, suggested that my kids and I live in his house until I got on my feet. That worked for about 7 hours. Damn. He realized that I wasn't interested in having sex with him. I mean, for God's sake, I'm sitting here crying. The thought of my mother being unalive breezed through my mind. I had snot running from my nose and I was screaming at the top of my lungs, and he wanted to have sex with me. So I packed up my garbage bag full of belongings, took my baby girl and my 3 sons. Then we left walking and ended up at the city shelter. I had called Phaedra several times. I left her several messages, but she never called me back. I should have known something was up when I called her the first day I got out and not received no response. But I continued calling. It was hard for me to imagine that she had just written me off like a bad habit. I would lend a hand to a complete and total stranger, so I couldn't understand what was making her act so cold towards me. September 3rd, 2005, I checked into the Atlanta Union Mission homeless shelter. My children and I were residing in one big room along with several other single mothers and their children. My baby girl cried all night long. It wasn't her fault. Amani just didn't know me. She was in an unfamiliar environment and she was scared to death. Babies know that they are helpless. They know that they can't stop someone from hurting them, just like I couldn't stop the Olester from hurting me. I knew how she felt. The other mothers were becoming frustrated because I couldn't stop my baby from crying. No matter what I did or which way I moved, my baby was dissatisfied and didn't mind voicing her opinion. All I could do was sit there hopeless and miserable. So I cried with her. When I was released from prison, I was given a check for $25 and instructions to report to the parole office in 72 hours. You don't leave prison with a job, a home, and a car. Well, at least not everyone does. I know I didn't, and all I had was a lot of worries, a bunch of stress, responsibility, and a criminal record. Once a criminal, always a criminal. You have all heard this statement before, right? Yeah, well, it remained the truth. There was almost no such thing as fully redeeming oneself. Or was there? It was time for me to report to the parole office. They informed me that I was free to visit the day that I left prison, but that turned out to be a lie. Unless, of course, you maxed out, meaning you served your total sentence. Even the justice system did forgive you, society never would. I didn't have anyone to keep my children. I didn't even have enough money to catch the bus to drop them off and then come back and pick them up. I couldn't see how that would work. And I made a decision that morning. I got my children dressed, I got myself dressed, and we waited at the bus stop. When I walked into the parole office, I sat all the way in the back, all the way up against the wall with my children. We sat there as a family side by side. I had to protect my children. Child molesters didn't have a warning sign on their foreheads. We were sitting amongst some of America's most worst criminals. I really should have thought twice before I took my children with me, but what other option did I have? If I didn't report, they would lock me up. and there was no telling with whom my babies would end up going to. I saw the chief parole officer walk to the front of the waiting room several times, looking at me and discussing my status with one of his peers. After one After about an hour, he called me to the back. My children and I took a seat inside of an office, and he angrily closed the door. He stepped out only to return 15 minutes later. When he stepped into the office and stared at me, he stared at my children and said, "Miss Stanton, don't you know that you are not supposed to bring children to the parole office?" With the explanation that I was aware of the rule, I told him that I had lost my mother and grandmother to death during my incarceration, and that I went on to tell that I was living in a shelter and I had just gotten my children back and I didn't have anyone to keep them. Every time I thought about my situation, I instantly felt weak and tears welled up in my eyes. There was the kind of tears that I could not stop from running down my cheeks, no matter how hard I tried. "Miss Stanton, you need to find someone to keep your children and report back here in the morning," he yelled. I did as he instructed. My aunt kept my children the next morning. I had to take them back I had to take them back to the same home that I vowed never to return to. I suppressed every depressing hair raising through I depressed every depressing, hair raising thought to the back of my mind and began my journey to the parole office. When I arrived at the parole office, I signed my name on the clipboard, and just as I put the pen down, I was immediately escorted to the back. Once I was there, to my surprise, 2 federal agents were awaiting my arrival to arrest me for conspiracy. They called it conspiracy against the federal government because I knew it. I was in the back of their vehicle, handcuffed yet again, and headed to Richard B. Russell building. I was in total shock. I was under the presumption that I had served all my time. Now, what was going to happen to my children? On the way to the Russell building, I was surprised when a federal agent, Steve Lazarus, asked me if I was interested in making my case disappear. I was all ears while wondering just exactly how we could make this happen. The federal agent told me that all I had to do was set up Jeezy. Damn, y'all hear this? Wow, this is crazy. I could have literally dropped unalive. Not believing what I just heard, the first thought that came to mind was, how the hell did they know that I had any affiliation with young Jeezy? I hadn't seen or spoken to Jeezy in over 2 years. So what or who gave the feds the impression that I could pull something like that off? I mean, even if I could, Jeezy had nothing to do with my case. And why would I set this man up because I got in trouble on a case that he knew nothing about? Jeezy didn't even know that I was in prison. And how do you know I know Jay? I asked. "We have our ways of finding out anything that we want to know, Miss Stanton," he answered with a smirk and a smug on his face. He wouldn't admit it, but I already knew. The feds had been listening in on my telephone conversations. Ooh, child. When I was locked up, all my phone calls had secretly been recorded. When I was serving time in state prison, the feds had been busy preparing their case against me. Every time I made a phone call, they were eavesdropping, listening for information that might further incriminate me. Out of curiosity, I played along with their game. I wanted to see what kind of case they were trying to build against Jeezy. And then Lazarus gave it to me straight when he asked, "Do you think that you can get him to sell you some drugs?" In my mind, I was pondering, were they stupid? I'm not a drug dealer. Jeezy does that. I couldn't believe that they played the game just as dirty as the streets played it. If they wanted Jeezy that bad, they would just have to get him on their own. I refused to be a part of their plot. Jeezy had never done anything to me or anyone that I knew, and I was not going to help the feds bring him down. My case was my own responsibility, and young Jeezy had nothing to do with my misdeeds. I couldn't believe what I just heard and what just happened. I had to get a message back to Jay, crying the whole time. I sat in the holding cell waiting for my turn to see the judge. When I finally saw the judge, I begged for mercy. I got down on my knees and I begged. I asked the judge, why didn't they just come and pick me up directly from prison? Why would anybody allow me to bond with my children and then snatch me away from them again? I explained I explained what I had been through. There was a loss of my mother and grandmother, and all that time I kept begging for mercy. And it was nothing more than pure mercy that was granted. The judge allowed me to sign my own bond. He placed me on a pretrial release program, and I was once again free. Not only was I now on parole, but I was now on state, county, and federal parole. Walking away from the Richard Russell building, something triggered in my mind. I wondered if Phaedra Parks already knew what was coming my way. I still hadn't heard from her ass. What in the world was going on? I had to get in touch with her now. I didn't have anything or anybody. All I kept thinking to myself was, when or if this was ever going to be over. I got on the bus the next day and I gazed out the window. The bus passed by the tall glass fixtures and adorned downtown Atlanta. I kept wondering what's next. Phaedra had not returned any of my calls. She was really my only hope. It never once crossed my mind that she had or would even consider turning her back on me. We had known each other for years, and she had bonded not only with me, but also with my children and my family. I started rationalizing. Maybe she got cold feet. Maybe she thought since my case was being picked up by the feds, I just don't know. Was there a possibility that she thought that I would sing? My mind was drowning in a sea of uncertainty, and I needed life support. Telling on Phaedra had never once crossed my mind. I had never been dragged through the system. Implicating her now only made things worse. I thought for sure that I would have heard from her by now, so I decided to stop by her office. When I walked up to the receptionist desk and asked to see her, I saw the green and white striped wallpaper, which brought back memories. A phone call was made to her office. The receptionist says, "Miss Parks, Angela Stanton is here to see you." I was so excited when I learned that she was in her office. I had finally caught up with her. All kinds of things began running through my mind as I imagined what our reunion would be like. What does she look like? Would she be happy to see me? What was her excuse for not answering or returning my phone calls? Moments later, the receptionist told me Miss Parks was in a meeting and would be tied up all day. My hopes were dashed, and I instantly dropped my head. I didn't want the receptionist to see me in despair. So at this point, I was thinking hard and fast. My sixth sense had kicked in once again, and something just didn't smell right. Before I walked out, I left Phaedra a copy of my manuscript and the address to the shelter that I was residing at with my children. 3 months passed and still no word from Phaedra. I was at Spondivits, a seafood restaurant on the south side of Atlanta, hanging with my cousin Nikki and enjoying a night out with some old friends. I ran into Jeezy and his entourage. I walked right up to him and said, "Hey, baby. Hey, Jay, baby, how you been? I see you all over the TV doing your thing. I'm so damn proud of you." Then I gave him a big hug. "Girl, I ain't seen you in a long time. Where the hell you been?" he asked. "I'm doing better now," I said with a smile. Then I gave him the story about how I'd been in prison the last couple of years, and I also told him I needed to talk with him about some business. He gave me a number. I locked it in my phone, and before he left, he was sure to extend me an invite to kick it with him and his crew. I politely declined and promised that it wasn't because I didn't want to go. It was simply that my life was different now. I wasn't the same girl that he used to know, and I didn't want to bring up the situation about the feds right then. There was too many people around him, and the atmosphere just wasn't right. I knew that there was a certain protocol that I had to follow in order to present the information to Jeezy regarding the federal agents. I also knew that he didn't want all of the people around him all up in his damn business. Over the next few days, I called the number several times without ever getting an answer. Finally, after realizing that he had given me his manager's number, Coach K, and not his direct number, I had no other choice but to relay the message to Coach K. Jeezy never called me to inquire, so I figured that it all worked out. I had been through the ringer and back trying to get my life back on track and provide a home for my children. 30 days was the maximum amount of time that I could spend at any shelter. People can't live there forever, you know. Months went by and still no word from Phaedra. By this time, I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment, small, shaggy, and in the best neighborhood that I could afford. I didn't want my sons to grow up around drugs or exposed to a lifestyle that would land them in prison or an early grave. During those 30 days, I endlessly searched for employment. I was denied job after job after job. I wasn't a dummy. I could read, write, and spell. I mean, how difficult could it be to work a job in today's society? It had nothing to do with working the job, but rather my criminal past, which presented a great barrier. The background check, every time it was done, reminded me that I would never, ever be truly free. Why even release me from prison if it's going to be impossible for me to survive in the free world? As far as I was concerned, I was still in captivity. This method has made the prison system a revolving door, and the crime rate will always be on the rise. This was the reason why the number of homeless men and people rather increases. This was why there were so many repeat offenders. You would be set free, but we're really not free. This can prove to be tiring. Do you try figuring it out? And will that moment come too late? So I applied for Section 8 and housing assistance. I was promptly denied by both departments because I was a convicted felon. This latest blow came as a surprise. Anytime I had ever gone to the projects, the place was infested with crime and convicted felons. I never wanted to live in the projects, but would have now. It wasn't like we had anywhere else to go. It got so bad at one point that I auditioned for a job as a stripper. I was hired at a nightclub and applied for my dancer's permit. It was promptly denied because I was a convicted felon. That also came as a huge surprise to me. It was a major blow to any financial aspiration that I held. You mean to tell me that because I was a convicted felon, I couldn't stand on a table and degrade myself for a few lousy dollars? Shit was getting real serious. I mean, I thought I could bend over and show what I ate for breakfast to anyone I chose. I was just upgraded from modern day slave, so I couldn't get butt ass naked. McDonald's wasn't even an option. I didn't have any housing assistance, so a 2-bedroom apartment was $675 monthly, and that was in the hood. Of course, the rent didn't include any utilities at all. So by the time I worked 40 hours at McDonald's earning $5.75 an hour, I still wouldn't have enough money to pay rent. Wow. That gig wasn't even worth my time. The move into the 2-bedroom apartment with my children was a start. It was hard, but I began thinking about a month earlier that I was in prison, and I became grateful. 2 days before my time expired at the shelter, I was downtown job searching and met a man. He was just a friendly guy. We began to talk, and I told him my story. For some reason, he seemed genuinely concerned. He told me that he had a friend who needed to talk with me, a friend that could possibly help me. The very next evening, I met with him and his friend. Both angels sent to me from heaven. The agreement was that I was to marry this man in order for him to stay in the United States. Y'all hearing this? He was from Africa, and I would get $15,000 just to sign my name on the dotted line. The movie Coming to America, starring Eddie Murphy, started to play in my mind. Just in case you were wondering, I never even thought twice about it. I agreed without hesitation. The man gave me $5,000 cash and told me that he would return to the States in 3 months with the other 10,000. We were to be married when he returned. Oddly enough, he never came back. I still have not heard from him or seen him since that day. God works in mysterious ways, though. He had made a way out of, he had made a way out when there was no way. I took the $5,000 cash and got me and my children somewhere decent to live. Then I bought us a ride, a good jump start to whatever God had in store for us. Once we moved and got settled in our new home, I was able to sit down and sort through boxes of my belongings, which my brother had held in storage for me. By the time I went through the second box, I found all of the contact numbers I had on Phaedra. I had her home, office, and cell phone numbers. These were numbers that I had forgotten during the 18 months in my incarceration. I knew that I could reach her on her cell phone without a doubt. I grabbed my cell phone and I dialed the number. "Miss Parks speaking," she answered on the first ring. The confidence in her tone convinced me that everything would be okay. "Hey, Phaedra," I responded in a mild-mannered voice. "Phaedra, this is Angela. I know you've been busy, but I've been trying to contact you. You know the feds locked me up, right? I just got out, Faye. I can't leave my kids again. They don't have anyone besides me, Phaedra, and you know that. I just don't know what to do." I spoke as calmly as I could. I promise you, eyes hadn't seen and ears hadn't heard the words that I really wanted to tell her. However, my back was against the wall, and I needed her more now than ever. She, on the other hand, acted surprised. It was as if she knew nothing at all about my federal charges. She even seemed shocked and offended that I had even called her. When she got over the shock, Phaedra went right into her routine, pleading her case to the court. She let me know straight up that she was afraid. At least that's what she told me. Phaedra claimed that her whole life and everything that she had worked so hard to build was at stake. I informed her that I had already lost everything and I had grown tired of hearing about her life. She wasn't even considering my present life situation, and my main concern was, of course, my children. Phaedra told me that she received my manuscript and had passed it along to a friend of hers who was an editor. I didn't even know whether to believe this or not. She also told me to inform the courts that she would be representing me and claimed that it would be a year or two before my trial. In the meantime, she wanted to work on getting my manuscript out there. I could tell by our conversation, or should I say, that little thing called discernment, that Phaedra really wasn't feeling me anymore. In my heart, I truly believed that she had decided to cut ties with her criminal side and live a normal life. That was fine with me, but we had unfinished business. I needed to restore my life for the sake of my children, and there was no way that I could afford a lawyer to help me beat this case. So, returning to prison meant my children would go back to the Department of Family and Children's Services, and it was something that I refused to let my children have to experience. If she no longer wanted my friendship, that was fine, but I needed and wanted my freedom. My children needed and wanted my freedom. Just like Phaedra said, it took a year or two before my trial would begin, so I tried my best to live a normal life and stay out of the limelight. The $5,000 didn't last forever. Before long, my children were looking at me for shelter, food, and love. I was unable to provide any of the material things, but love came on demand. My mind was going, and I was contemplating putting an end to my existence. Not only did I contemplate suicide, but also taking the lives of my children right along with mine. This was a thought that I had never, ever shared with anybody until now. It was so hard to love when you are stuck inside of a dark, cold place. I had grown tired of watching my children suffer, and thoughts of all the tricks that I had learned from Phaedra kept breezing through my mind. I had to be strong, so I pushed all my thoughts of suicide completely out of my head. I knew I had only one life to live, and I felt that I was sent here for a reason. Lastly, my life wasn't mine to take. To survive, I did what I had to do. I prayed daily and I wouldn't get caught. I know a lot of people don't agree with what was just recorded, but I was just not asking for agreement. I was not asking for you to agree with me. I wanted you to understand. If there was no comprehension, then try emphasizing. In other words, put yourself in my shoes for 1 second. All right. We're going to chapter 10, child. Woo woo. Y'all enjoying? This is good. All right. So, chapter 10, 3 steps short of a breakthrough. All right. This is the last chapter of this book, y'all. All right. Let's go. I was pumping gas at a gas station near my rundown apartment. The kids were in the back seat going crazy. They were fighting, throwing things, and yelling. I guess the normal things that any 2, 5, and 8 and 10-year-olds did. But on this particular day, it was obvious one of my days when I had put much thought into the reality of my mother no longer being on this earth. I had lost it, and right there at the gas pump, I was hysterically crying. I was completely inconsolable. A kind of understanding gentleman walked up to me. He asked if there's anything that he can do to help. At this point, I was behind my car, lying on the ground almost under the tire. I was angrily cursing at the Lord, cursing my life, and cursing my children. Again, I was in a very cold, dark, and low place. I spilled my guts out to this total, complete stranger. Stumbling through the explanation of how I was on state and federal parole, I told him I was being pressured to find employment and no one would hire me. I was struggling to provide for my children. My mother had died and my grandmother died shortly after her. I went on and on, spilling my guts while crying my eyes out to this complete stranger. It was as if he was Jesus. Looking back now, I realized that he was another angel God had sent my way. The very next morning, the same complete stranger had given me a job. I began working for the Georgia Department of Transportation. I was working as a laborer on the side of the highway 285 for 2 weeks before I brushed shoulders with the manager of human resources, Princess Ferguson. A receptionist position had become available, and the company policy was that they offer job placement in-house before they advertise to the general public. So, without hesitation, I applied. Miss Ferguson was blown away by my ability to dialogue and genuine professional manner. She saw a light shining on the inside of me. It was a light which I thought had been burned out by my past circumstances. Thank you for calling the Department of Transportation, District 7. Angela Stanton is speaking. How may I help you? This was my script. I loved my job and I admired my new boss, Princess. She was very fond of her. I was very fond of her because she looked at me. She saw no faults in me. She gave me a fair shot and didn't criticize me negatively when I did something wrong. Rather, she would just show me the proper way to do it. Princess demanded nothing more than my absolute best. My absolute best was exactly what I provided, and this earned 2 more promotions in the 13 months that I worked there. I had finally found stability. My parole officers, and especially my federal pretrial release officer, Lorna Murphy, supported me. She watched me like a hawk to ensure my success, and I could tell really that she truly cared. This was more than just a job for her. I felt that she wanted what was best for my children and me. It was a long, hard road, but with her encouragement and her refusal to let me fall, I made it. This was all the way up to the federal trial. This went all the way up to the federal trial, leaving every day with uncertainty, not knowing whether or not I would be around to raise my children was a battle in itself. When my federal trial was set to begin, Phaedra Parks promptly notified the court that she wouldn't be representing me due to a conflict of interest. Damn, Phaedra. I had no idea what that meant. I just knew that she wasn't coming to court. I didn't have time to try and figure out what was going on with Phaedra. I was at war fighting for my life. Federal Judge Linda Evans assigned Susan Hashimi to my case. Ms. Hashimi worked as fast and as diligently as she could within the time frame she was given. Ms. Hashimi believed in me and believed that I deserved a second chance. I didn't have any doubt in my mind that she wasn't fighting for me. My trial began 2 weeks after I was notified by mail, and I made endless trips back and forth to Ms. Hashimi's office. Going over my case from front to back, beginning to end, Ms. Hashimi had given herself a chance to know me as a person and not as a criminal. She even took up donations from her coworkers to help me with support of my children. Just about everyone in her office donated something, even if it was just $1. This helped me tremendously, and my children and I were very grateful. God had placed people in my life who truly wanted to see me succeed. The morning of my trial, I prayed just as I did every morning. I asked God to have his way, the only way I knew. And I had been through enough to realize that man's plan and God's plan were totally different. I was a nervous wreck, just full of emotions, and my mind was racing back and forth. There was no guarantee that I wouldn't be serving any more time. I was facing 5 years for conspiracy, and the state time that I served had absolutely nothing to do with my federal case. Even though this was all the same crime, Ms. Hashimi had to prove to federal judge Linda Evans that I had learned my lesson and therefore did not deserve to go back to prison. I sat on the right side of Judge Evans with my attorney. Everett Tripodis sat at the left side of Judge Evans with his attorney. Ms. Hashimi and I sat silently and listened as Everett's lawyers pleaded his case for him. We listened as his attorney told Judge Evans that I was the mastermind behind the whole operation and that he worked for me under my direction. That was a good one. Now it started making sense to me where the investigators got all their information. Ms. Hashimi was quick to object. She stated that I didn't have any related crimes in my criminal background, but Everett Tripodis and his brother Apollo Nida, on the other hand, were both on federal parole with the same exact crimes at the time of their arrest. Judge Evans held a stare that could pierce any soul. She was an honest and fair judge who made sure that she read between every line. Judge Evans did not believe that I was the mastermind. She was concerned with how much involvement I had in this federal racketeering scheme. Before Judge Evans sentenced Everett, she gave him the opportunity to speak for himself. He stood before the court and begged the judge for his release. His excuse was because his mother was sick and he wanted to be by her side before she passed away. I could have vomited all over the courtroom at that point. I was noticeably sick to my stomach. Judge Evans was reasonable but firm. She sentenced Everett Tripodis to 5 years right in front of me. He was escorted out of the courtroom and I was next. I could hear my mother's words again. Girl, one day your mouth is going to get you in a world of trouble. I thought about her words because they were true. I was going back to prison and there wasn't any doubt in my mind. My legs were shaking uncontrollably. My bowels were weak. I had hot flashes and I just knew that it was over for me. The thought of my children suffering any more than they already did took the life right up out of me. My federal parole officer, Lorna Murphy, stood before the court and she testified on my behalf. Something she told me that she'd never done for any parolee throughout her career. Lorna Murphy spoke about the changes that she observed in me and about how I had transformed from nothing into something. I was a success story, and she shared the reports that she received from my counselor and the reports from the clinical psychologists. They all attested to the fact that I had been completely rehabilitated. My brother testified on my behalf, and Ms. Hashimi proved my case. She provided the court with a letter from the Georgia Department of Transportation stating that I was an excellent employee and that I had a great future with the company. Ms. Hashimi showed the court that I was an asset and with not any liability. I had become a law-abiding, tax-paying citizen. Sending me back to prison would be a waste of taxpayers' money and would serve as an injustice to my children. When it was, hold on. It was my turn to stand before the court, and I pled my case. I stood and I focused on the judge and said, first and foremost, I want to apologize to you, Judge Evans, and the court as well. I take full responsibility for my actions, Judge Evans, and I want to just throw myself upon the mercy of the court. I heard Everett Tripati say that he wanted to be by his mother's side before she passed. Well, Judge Evans, my mother did pass during my incarceration, and so did my grandmother. And due to certain circumstances, I wasn't at either funeral. I also gave birth to my daughter handcuffed to a bed, and I wasn't able to be a mother to her until she was 18 months old. Those things I would like the courts to take into consideration before my sentencing. Those things are far worse than any prison sentence. I would have rather served 20 years and come home to my mother than to serve 18 months I served that took everything away, and everything that I have ever cherished. Thank you, Your Honor, for taking your time to hear my words. Judge Evans stared at me long and hard before she made her decision. Every time she opened her mouth to say something, she looked directly at me, shook her head, and sat back in her chair. She knew that she was thinking intensely. But what killed me is that I had no idea what she was thinking. The courtroom was quiet, enough to hear a pin drop. The anticipation of her words would be the entire courtroom, would have the entire courtroom on edge. I was silently praying while awaiting the verdict. My fate was hanging in the balance. Through the corners of my eyes, I could see my brother, head bowed and praying. Lorna Murphy was also praying as well. Likewise, Miss Hashimi was praying on my behalf. I felt my mother's presence in the courtroom with me. I knew this in my heart, even though I couldn't see her and I couldn't hear her, but I could feel her. We were all on the same accord that day, asking God the same blessing, and God answered our prayers. Judge Evans sentenced me to 3 years supervised release. It meant that I would not go back on the inside, that I could indeed stay out on the outside with my children, but I would be on parole for the next 3 years. Whoo, that's good. I must have cried and thanked God all day long. It was such a lovely day. He had delivered me from the snares of the devil once again. My life almost began to feel normal. My trial was behind me, and I didn't have any pending charges. Shahid was long gone out of my life and had been sentenced to life on his unaliving charge. I had a career ladder job with benefits. My children were in counseling. We had our apartment and our ride. I was so happy. God had finally restored my life. Thank you, sweet Jesus. Over the course of the next few months, my life was pretty average. I went to work, then I returned home, cooked, ironed, washed clothes, and cared for my children. I worked extra hard to try and build our relationship again. I was a normal, law-abiding citizen. I went from being a hot girl who was worried about the law to having a job and being a full-time mother. No more running the streets with my cousins. No more side hustles. I wasn't living from check to check, but it sure felt like it because there was never any money left to save. Every time I paid all the bills, the kids needed something else. If it wasn't clothes, it was shoes. If it wasn't shoes, it was food or gas for the car. There was always something to eat up whatever spare change that I had lying around. By this time, I had endured so much in my life that the negative came along with the positive. In other words, rather, I hoped for the best, but prepared for the worst. I learned to take the good with the bad. So it would pretty much take a lot to get me upset or out of character. I kept striving to be the best that I could be on my job, and with every free moment, I tried to make up for the lost time with my children. My highest position with the Georgia Department of Transportation was in the personnel department. I had been promoted yet again. I was now the person that sat behind the desk during the interview process. Oh Lord. When I interviewed people, I always looked for sincerity. It was sincere, honest, and upfront about their past. I figured they deserved a chance. They were just they were people just like myself who had already had strikes against them and would work 10 times harder. They were driven harder by some unknown force because they knew that they had everything to lose. My coworkers were astonished by my growth in the company. They witnessed my hunger and my eagerness to survive. One glance at me and all they saw was an outer shell. They had no idea what was deep down inside of me. They didn't know that my job was all my children and I had. One of my coworkers applied for the position that had just been granted. Not only did she apply for it, but she also had basically already claimed it. She was sadly disappointed and strongly disagreed with the decision to give me the position. May the best woman win, and hands down, I was the best. I was the best because I had to be. What choice did I have with so many strikes against me? The job was the best thing I had going, and I was going to hold it. I was going to hold on to it for dear life. I knew this particular coworker had it in for me, and I saw her dirty looks and her snares towards me were very obvious. But not only just that, I even dreamed of her in my home one night. In the dream, she was chasing me in my hallway. She was the size of a T-Rex. I was angry, starving, and hunting. She was angry, starving, and hunting me down, making me her prey. That sounds crazy, but let me get to the next part. It was Mother's Day, and I was on my way to work, listening to the Yolanda Adams morning show. I loved Yolanda Adams. Her lyrics had been inspirational to me. When my mother passed during my imprisonment, one of my fellow slave mates gave me a CD player with a copy of Yolanda Adams' latest album, The Battle Is Not Yours. God knows that song has saved my life. Her voice and her words restored my soul. If I ever get to meet her one day, I will be sure to tell her how much her lyrics meant to me. But nonetheless, everyone was calling in, giving thanks to their mother, and I was obviously not only moved by the outpouring of affection, but also the love shown on this particular Mother's Day. I felt the urge to call in and share my pain with the world. It would be my way of letting the world know that people should never take their mothers for granted. So I did. I shared my story about how my mother died while I was in prison and how I wished that I had done things differently. When I got to work that morning, my coworker, the one that I dreamed of, had heard me on the radio. So she asked, Angela, were you on the radio this morning? I said, no. Then I walked right by her desk. That's funny. I could have sworn that was your voice that I heard. It was someone that sounded just like you, though, she said. I left it at that and never responded. A couple of days later, I arrived to work. And 5 minutes after my arrival, my boss called me into the office. She informed me that I was being terminated and that there was absolutely nothing she could do about it. Apparently, someone had gone online, pulled up my criminal background, and sent an anonymous letter to the commissioner of GDOT. Damn, that is fucked up. That was that hating ass T-Rex. The letter stated that I had been in prison for forgery and that I should not be allowed to work in the personnel department with access to everyone's personal information. The commissioner made the decision herself to fire me. There was nothing my boss or her boss could ever do about it. There it was. The enemy had won again. The devil hated when I shared my story with people. My story held power to heal. And I called the commissioner and I begged her to at least demote me or transfer me to another unit. I begged, please, ma'am, I'm a single mother. I have no other way to provide for my children. I told her everything I could to keep my job, but she had no emotion. She truly could have cared less, just like the counselor my mother sent to talk to me. Hold on. Just like the counselor my mother sent to talk to after I died at the age of 5. Like getting rid of a dirty rag, she threw me away, and my whole entire life and my children's well-being went with it. A few months after I was fired, she made the national headlines herself. The commissioner of GDOT was caught in a scandal. But unlike me, she was afforded mercy. How ironic. When she cried about how she was a single mother of one, she got to keep her job. Well, damn, I'll just be damned. I started to pay a remember me visit. I wanted to make her remember my situation during her time of discomfort, just to see if she could empathize with me. I mean, seeing how she had no sympathy for me back then, maybe she would be more understanding. Well, we all know that God doesn't like ugly. No, not one bit. Nonetheless, I was back to square one. Now what? I cried when I lost my job, of course. That was simply because I didn't see any other way out at the time. But after time passed, I realized that my job with GDOT was just a bridge. It was a bridge to carry me from the beginning to my federal trial to now. Without my job with the GDOT, Judge Evans would have most certainly sent me back to prison. My job showed that I was productive. It was a reason for me not to commit crimes. No sense crying over spilled milk. God was in control now, honey. Before long, the bills were piling up again. The rent was due, and my children were begging for everything they saw on television. I needed to talk to someone. On the verge of having a nervous breakdown, I made an appointment to see my OBGYN doctor. Dr. Neil Freeman had proved to be a special person in my life. He worked at the neighborhood welfare clinic, Southside Healthcare. His office was walking distance from my grandmother's home. Dr. Freeman had provided all of the prenatal care for my 3 sons. He even delivered 2 of them. Every time I went to Dr. Freeman's office, it was like going to see my father. He gave me countless sessions on what I should be doing to get my life together. Being my doctor for over 13 years, he knew my story all too well. I was 4 months pregnant with Imani the last time Dr. Freeman saw me, and he wondered why I had dropped off the face of the earth. On this particular visit, I couldn't hold my composure. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it after the last blow life had given me. I told Dr. Freeman about my journey to prison, my release, my job, and how I was back to nothing. I had my recently finished manuscript with me. It was my life, everywhere I went, I carried it along with me. I showed it to him and briefly detailed what it was about. After intently listening, the look in his eyes beneath his square frame glasses said it all. Dr. Freeman is a tall, bright, light-skinned, handsome man. He was amazed and immediately started telling me about his friend Goldie Taylor and about all of her accomplishments. Goldie Taylor was a famous television personality with connections in the literary field. Her biggest achievements of all to me was the fact that she was a successful author. She was my dream. Dr. Freeman gave his word that she would help me. Before I left his office that day, I had Goldie Taylor's number in hand. It was the blessings that I had been waiting for. This provided me with the incentive that I needed to keep on pushing. Before calling Goldie, I went to the public library and did some research into her life. I will be the first to say that I was blown away by what she had accomplished. The day that I spoke with Goldie, I could tell that there was something in her voice which let me know that everything would be all right. She was all ears when I shared my story, and I told her about the sexual abuse that I endured as a child. I was surprised by the fact that she told me that she had also been a victim as well. There was an instant bond welding between us. I asked if she knew Phaedra Parks. She told me that she did, but she didn't go into any details at that point because Goldie and I needed to feel each other out. She agreed to meet with me the next week. I sent her my manuscript by email so that she could read it in the meantime. The following week, I met Goldie Taylor in the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel on Peachtree Street. She came with gifts in hand. Goldie was a short woman compared to me. She had hair the color of gold, golden skin, and golden eyes. I could easily see why her name was Goldie. She had given me a signed copy of her own book, several other books, and a gift card from Barnes and Noble. In addition to that, she had she had a contract for me to sign. She was so moved by my story, not only my story, but the stories that resided within the pages of my book, Life Beyond These Walls. She agreed to represent me as my agent. Many promises were made, and I was left with a new outlook in life. With my contract signed and dated the next few weeks, I seemed to be making progress. Goldie had already explained to me the grueling process of editing, so I wasn't too pressed about how quickly this project would jump. I was just happy that the process had started. My life was beginning to take perfect shape. I had stopped stressing and now I stopped stressing and was now dreaming of all the things that I would be able to provide for my children. Then one day, when I was feeling good, there came one phone call that shifted my life again. The phone rang, and looking at the caller ID, I saw that it was Goldie Taylor calling. Feeling the excitement building up inside, I immediately grabbed my phone. My smile quickly turned into a frown. Goldie bluntly and unremorsefully explained that she had received a contract from Warner Brothers, and one that she had been waiting for. The contract clearly stated that she could not work on any other projects. Just like that, my dream had died to a quick death. It was the last telephone call I had ever received from Goldie Taylor, and I was hurt because she dropped me like a hot rock. But at the same time, I was genuinely happy for her success. Why I feel like Phaedra was behind that shit. I wasn't going to hate on her for being something that I wasn't. Oh well, back to square one. Back to absolutely nothing. I hated taking the position that I took, but it is what it is. You can't live without money, not in this world, not in anybody's world. Hell, I had to do what I had to do to take care of my children. I was back on the streets doing what I do best. This included whatever it took to make a way for me and my children. I did it. Always smart enough. I knew I had to have a legal gig going on. I had a hidden talent that hadn't been exposed to the world yet. I was a poet, and street poetry was my calling. I was always known for rapping. I knew people in the music industry, and those contacts came from me dating drama. I had been in the studio with a lot of Atlanta rappers before they made it big. My love for rhymes allowed me to cross paths with many of today's famous artists, including Young Dro, Shawty Lo, Fabo, Big Country Kane, T.I., Gucci Mane, DJ Jelly, and a host of others. Wow. The first time I really made any noise was when I remixed Shawty Lo's single, Dope Boys Got the Girls Gone Wild. I switched to it. Dope Girls got the boys going wild. Went in the studio, got with his producer, Born Immaculate, and remixed his song on his set. Now that was how one makes a huge statement. It was funny watching all his boys come into the back of the studio, standing around the booth and staring at me through the glass. They needed to witness my act with their own eyes. They couldn't believe that they couldn't believe what they were hearing. I was the truth. Believe that. I stayed in the studio destined to make a hit. Something had to give. The book I wrote in prison was on hold because I didn't know what to do with it. Phaedra was acting brand new, and I guess she had cut us all off and gone on with her life. I wasn't tripping too hard though. I was really just glad that all of it was over. I never truly understood why she refused to help me rebuild my life. I mean, she was all for it when I was doing all the illegal stuff for her. I had one major thing on my side. I had a book now, a book that every young girl in the world needed to read. Why wouldn't she be all over it or all for it when it was something legal and positive? If our relationship had been restricted to boss and worker, then I would have a better understanding. But Phaedra was my friend. She was a godmother to my son Javion. And she didn't even give me the honor of sitting down with me to describe my mother's day on earth, my last day on earth, my mother's last day on earth. What had I done to push her so far away? I just could not understand it. Recording a hit was now at the top of my to-do list. This was prior to Nicki Minaj hitting the music scene. There weren't any new female rappers out, so the market was wide open. There had to be a way out there for my children and me. I was good at anything that I put my mind to, so I knew that the perfect time to come out with a hit. So I knew that this was the perfect time to come out with a hit. I was sitting at my son's father's house when I heard Decatur Slim singing a hook. Get a life, get some swag. Stop popping at the mouth and pop tags. The hook kept going off. The hook kept going off in my head like every 5 minutes. I would hear it again. After a while, the light bulb went off in my head. That was it. This was going to be the hook for my new song. I sat down with my son's father and my cousin Scott, not just by chance, but because they were experienced. Scott had already recorded and released an album, and Decatur Slim was one of the best rappers that I had ever come across. We wrote the song in less than an hour, and we knew it was a hit. We went straight to Patchwork Studios. I know exactly what that is. We went exactly to Patchwork Recording Studios and recorded it. Boy Stop by Lady Lennox. The song was hot. Knowing a hit when I heard it, the producer at Patchwork jumped right on it. He took me straight to Hit After Hitter Entertainment to meet with Johnny Cabell. Johnny heard the song and was digging it. At first, he tried me, and it was to be expected. He asked me if I wanted to sell my song to Mac Breeze, a local female rapper that he managed. She made her claim to fame when she was featured on Gucci Mane's single, Go Ahead. Yes, I did say try me. The song was made for me. No flexing, no lying, the honest truth. And you had to have lived that life to rap that song, I explained to Johnny. Just like that, straight up. He told me that he had to go out of town and wanted to meet with me in 2 weeks when he returned. During those 2 weeks, the song started playing everywhere in Atlanta, on the radio, in the nightclubs, and in all the strip clubs. People were feeling that song everywhere, straight up. My brother Lee, my cousins, and family were calling saying that they were somewhere and heard it being played. That was one of the best feelings in the world. Johnny Cabell had managed just about every hot rapper in the South, from Shawty Lo to Gucci Mane. If you wanted to get into the game, you lived in the city, Johnny was the man that you needed on your team. I spoke with Johnny several times while he was out of town. I shared my struggle with him, and after hearing my story, he told me that the path of crime of my life had taken my struggle, and that the force that was driving me reminded him of Shawty Lo. I talked to him about the book that I had written in prison, Life Beyond These Walls, and my plans. The plan I had was to release Boy Stop as a single, just to get the attention of the youth and make a name for myself. Once I accomplished that, I wanted to push the book. right along with launching a national campaign for my nonprofit organization, Don't Ask, Just Tell, and Stop the Silence. I formed this. I formed this not. I formed this nonprofit agency to help worldwide victims of sexual abuse. That was my dream, and I thought that it was a good idea, and so I did, and so did he. I honestly believe that he saw my vision of helping others. Spring of 2008, Memorial Day was around the corner, and everybody I was affiliated with was going to Miami. So I went also. My whole purpose for going was to promote the song, but I hadn't been anywhere since returning from prison. My children were with my younger cousin, Monique. She agreed to stay over at my house and keep them. I kept thinking that a little vacation wouldn't hurt. I called up my homeboy, Jay at Patchwork, and had 5,000 CDs printed. Me, my partner, Renita, and another one of our homegirls rented a vehicle and headed for Miami. We didn't even have a hotel room. We just made up our mind to go and we left. Everybody and their mama was in Miami. South Beach was rocking off the chain. Parties were everywhere. Thousands of people, all the rappers and all of the entertainers were living it up. Jeezy was there, riding around in his blue Lamborghini. I wanted to give him a copy of my CD, and I spoke to him, and he hollered back. I started to approach him to give him a copy of my CD. He had a look in his eyes which told me that he didn't want to be bothered, so I turned and walked away. I wasn't about to sweat him, child. I knew him too well when he was Jay. I wasn't stuck on the young Jeezy hype. Renita got the DJ to play Boys Stop while thousands of people were on the beach. She was a genius. The crowd loved it. Shawty Low was hot at this time. So he was on the beach and he heard it too. And it felt so good to look at thousands of people listening to my words. They were all jamming to the song of to the sound of my voice. About an hour later, in the lobby of the Sagamore Hotel, I saw Shawty Low and he commended me on the song. He told me that he wanted to do a remix when we got back to Atlanta. I was ecstatic. He told me to call Johnny Tuesday and make an appointment for the studio. That was all I needed to hear. It felt like Christmas. I called my cousin back home and told them to start celebrating. Everybody was so excited about the news that they just wanted to know when I was coming back to Atlanta. Sunday, I screamed with excitement. From that point on, I started to enjoy the rest of my vacation. I had something to look forward to when I got back home. I emailed Phaedra my MP3 copy of my song. Everybody knew it was a hit. Since she had connections with the record companies, I thought that she would at least put it out there for me. But I never heard back from her. I wasn't about to let that stop me. I was disgruntled a lot by this. I was like asking for handouts. I was creating opportunities for her to make money as well. I was now really tripping off Phaedra's ability to distance herself from me. She always pointed out that we were family. When I made it back to Atlanta, I felt 100 pounds lighter and I was relieved that something had finally worked out in my favor. This was the closest I had ever come to living my dream. As per my conversation with Shawty Low, I called Johnny on Tuesday. He was still out of town and promised to call me when he returned. I was on pins and needles, anxious and ambitious. I was even counting my money that I ain't even made yet and about to burst with excitement. Afraid that I would miss his call, I checked my phone every 15 minutes. 2 days later, Johnny called to tell me that he had just landed at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. He offered to pay me for a ride. Johnny told me that his cars were parked at his home. I understood. I would not want to leave my fancy high-priced cars at anyone's airport either. My stomach was cramping due to my menstruation, and it had been cramping all night. But I was only 5 minutes away from the airport, and I needed the money, and I wanted to discuss the remix anyway. So doing the remix with Shawty Low had been the only thing on my mind. I could barely sleep. Johnny was already waiting outside when I arrived at the airport. I spoke to him on the phone as I pulled in. By the time he had on his seatbelt, he was already deep in conversation with someone else, and all of his conversation was strictly business. I listened closely while playing it off as if I wasn't interested. But I heard the deals that he had sealed with Shawty Low, and I was impressed and his ability to make things happen. He had lived about 20 minutes from the airport, right off Moreland Avenue, behind Club Blaze. As I rode with this man, who I had no reason not to trust, I never perceived him to be any threat to my well being. He invited me into his home. Oh, Lord. His mother greeted me at the door, and that only made me feel more secure. I felt that I had sealed the deal with Johnny. Why else would he take a stranger to his home? He escorted me upstairs to his living quarters, where he had his master bedroom and had brown plush leather sofa in the far right of the room. I took a seat on the sofa and watched him stretch out across his beautifully adorned California king bed. Johnny was dressed in Gucci from head to toe. I sat there another 30 minutes and listened as he continued to book shows back to back. His mother yelled upstairs that she was stepping out for a moment. A few minutes later, he hung up the phone and asked me to give him a massage. Ooh, y'all know where this is going, right? I should have known. I should have known then that something wasn't right. But like a dummy, I fell into the trap and I began massaging his shoulders. Mind you, he was fully dressed and so was I. The next thing I knew, I was thrown down on the bed like yesterday's laundry. Johnny used the upper part of his body to pin me down on the bed, restraining me and preventing any movement. Johnny was 6 feet tall and weighed nearly 300 pounds. I couldn't believe what was happening. I was being R-worded. I cried out to Johnny, begging him to stop. Johnny, what are you doing? I'm on my period. Give me a couple days and I'll just come back. I pleaded with him, but nothing worked. It was as if I had been possessed by something. His outer appearance changed, and I felt absolutely helpless. Johnny ripped off my jeans like they were a piece of paper. Then he stuck his finger inside of me and yanked out my tampon. Oh my God. I thought for sure after seeing the bloody tampon that he would have just stopped, but he didn't. He never thought to use a condom. He rammed himself into my bloody vajayjay while ignoring my pleas for him to stop. Biting me and pinning me down seemed to excite him even more. The more I hollered and screamed, the harder he pushed himself onto me. I was afraid, and I had no clue if my life was going to end that day. I didn't know what was going to happen next when he got through handling his business. I couldn't understand what he was doing or why he was doing this to me. This was Johnny. He had money and he could have any girl in the city that he wanted. What the fuck? Being molested when you were young and helpless as a child, and then being R-worded when you became a grown woman were two totally different things. There were two totally different effects on my mind and body, and I was all grown up, and I had my due, and I paid my dues, and I didn't have to answer to anyone. I worked or hustled for everything that I had, and hadn't asked anyone for anything. What gave Johnny the right to take something from me? When Johnny got through, to my surprise, he rolled over and fell right asleep. I sat there for a moment, astonished. I snapped back rather quickly, grabbed my jeans, and left him lying there on the bed. I got in my car and drove to the nearest gas station and called Phaedra. She answered on the first ring. This was only because I had changed my phone number since the last time we talked. She probably thought I was one of her clients. I was crying hysterically when I told her what happened. Phaedra knew Johnny, and it sounded as if she was trying her best to comprehend what I just told her. I asked Phaedra, what do I do? If he's obviously R-worded you, well, then call the police, she said. My mind started to spin. Call me after you speak with the authorities, she said. I hung up from Phaedra, and then I called the DeKalb Police Department. The police responded within minutes, and I was immediately taken to the hospital for a R-word kit. Johnny was woken up by the crime scene investigating unit. He hadn't even bathed and was still lying on the bed with the bloody tampon. Now that was just nasty. Of course, he told the police that the sex was consensual. The detective had already told me that he was going to do that. My biggest worry now was what type of disease had he given me. He didn't even know me like that. He had only seen me twice before he R-worded me. What type of man had forced sex with a female, especially one that they don't know, and while she was on her cycle? That thought alone had me going insane. To me, he had nothing to lose by his actions. Johnny was charged with strong arm R-wording me. The next couple of days were absolutely crazy. The first telephone call that I received was from Shawty Lowe. I know Johnny had him call me, but what Johnny didn't know was that I already knew Shorty Lowe. I used to date a friend of his that went by the name Post Slim. Even though Slim and I were no longer together, he still wanted to see me succeed. It was funny how I had met Slim. I was walking through the mall in the West End, and it was about a year after my release, summer of 2006. He noticed me walking in the mall, and he had an appetite for tall women. Ooh, child. Slim was very persistent. We kicked it, and I had no problem speaking to him. We walked together, and we talked about my struggle. And to say the very least, he was amazed by my hunger. Tied to the streets himself, he did not appreciate crimes committed against women and children. Shawty Lowe knew what the deal was, but he was still stuck in the middle, trying to patch things up. True enough, Johnny was dead ass wrong. However, there was a conflict of interest. Johnny had Lowe's career in the palm of his hands. If Johnny went to jail, that meant everybody associated with him would lose. I felt some compassion towards this. I had a similar story with Phaedra, and I knew where he was coming from. Lowe begged for Johnny's life and was willing to agree to whatever demands that I had to drop all the charges. Shawty Lowe made the first offer. Okay, now things were getting difficult. The next call came from Fabo. I already knew him from before, D4L, back when he was down with Raheem the Dream. Damn, she know a lot of people. They were talking numbers, big numbers for my silence. The first song I ever made was with Fabo. He was my partner. And he said, "You got a man?" Letting me know that whatever I wanted, Johnny would adhere to. He also didn't hesitate to inform me of my risk of becoming a target. On another note, my rap career was in the palm of my hands. It was strictly up to me, and I thought about Fabo's words. True enough, but Fabo didn't know about my past. I knew that I would be receiving another call, so I went to Walmart and purchased a mini tape recorder. Moments after I opened the recorder and figured out how to work it, the phone rang. The caller ID read, "Johnny, hit, fit, or hit." I pressed record. This shit crazy. Let the phone ring a couple more times before I answered the call. I was trying to get my thoughts together. Then the call dropped before I had a chance to answer it. I pressed record again before dialing the number back. Johnny signed his life away during this telephone conversation. He apologized for R-wording me. He admitted to removing my tampon, but didn't look at it because he didn't want to see the blood. He told me that he couldn't find himself because I was red with, He told me that he couldn't help himself because I was red with tattoos and he had a thing for girls like that. Johnny agreed to give me money, but he put me on his payroll and pushed my career. Keep in mind that this was all recorded. I still have the tape in my possession. I listen to it every time I want to be reminded of the enemy and how he comes to kill, steal, and destroy. After the conversation with Johnny, I played the tape back to make sure I had recorded it, and I did. This was evidence that I would need to prove that I wasn't lying. The evidence that I needed to prove that I wasn't just another groupie trying to get money out of a celebrity. I called Phaedra to let her know that I had the tape and that they were offering me money. I needed her guidance because I didn't know what to do or how to handle this situation. Phaedra never returned any of my calls. I told the detective about the tape and he asked me to bring it in. I also told him about the offers that were presented to me. He told me that that was the way that these things go because the guys have money. They don't understand the word no, and they pay their way out of everything. This was not what I had planned. I was supposed to meet Johnny and get a date for the studio and remix my song. How did things go south? I mean, damn. What? Hold on. Oof. What happened? All hell broke loose when my brother Lee found out I was dealing with a lot around this time. The death of our mother was still fresh. Every day felt like she had just died the day before. Lee's wife suddenly became ill. She was diagnosed with cancer. Then his only sibling and baby sister had been R-worded by Johnny. What Johnny did was the straw that broke the camel's back. I tried consoling Lee all I could, but he was inconsolable. The fuck you, hold on. The F you mean raping my R-wording my sister, nigga. My sister. Oh, I'm finna unalive this biatch ass ninja. Lee shouted. Tears of anger streamed down his face. Lee held his 45 in his hand. He carefully loaded each, bullet. I stared in awe because I'd never seen my brother like this before. Mother always said the difference between my two children is night and day. Lee was always quiet, humble, and mild-mannered. I, on the other hand, 7 years younger and always ready to get it popping. I mean, I was rowdy. At that dreadful moment, it seemed as if my brother and I had switched places. He was just as determined to put hands and feet on Johnny and unalive him just as I was to Curtis. The police were already involved, and I told Lee that if he unalived this man, then he would be the first suspect. My brother rose up like a giant and roared, so I don't give a F about this man. And I'm not no effing coward, my enraged brother shouted. Then he sprinted towards the door. In my mind, I already knew where he was headed. Lee and I were very close, and I told him everything. He knew where Johnny lived, and he knew exactly where Johnny's office was on Peachtree Street, downtown in Atlanta. Driving across the living room floor, I wrapped both arms. Hold on. Oh, diving across the living room floor, I wrapped both arms around his legs, tackling him. Then I begged him not to throw his life away. I told him to think of my niece, Maya, his only daughter. If you go to prison, who's going to be here to protect her? I asked. Finally, my words grabbed him, and he heeded. He stopped, and he looked at me. This giant of a man fell to the floor and cried like a baby. I held him in my embrace, and I was the closest touch he had to our mother. Together we cried, and I promised that it would be okay, just like our mother always told us. There was more than one way to skin a cat. Looking back that day, I can't for the life of me understand what Johnny was thinking. My best guess, he assumed that I needed him more than he needed me. He knew my story all too well, and he knew that I have many choices in my life. I guess that he thought that he could R-word me, then I would just let it go because I needed him on my team. But I wasn't going for that. I couldn't. I didn't have any say-so about what happened to me when I was 5, but I was in control this time. Whether Johnny understood it or not, this was very personal for me, and he was in violation. I wasn't about to let this ride. No, fuck that. Ooh, child, she's about to go off. I was worried about a lot of things, and I thought about the conversation I had with Fabo about becoming a target. Remember, I'm from the streets, and I know how people get down. Johnny had a lot of young people on his team basically sweating him or riding his coattail. They all wanted to make it. Rap was a way out of the hood for many people who had no other way out. Johnny could make that happen for them, and I was sure that in return for that favor, that wouldn't have a problem with getting rid of me. The police weren't willing to provide me with any protection. My children and I didn't have anything or anywhere to go. I started weighing my options again, looking at my children. I wanted to do what was best for them. $30,000 seemed like a lot at the time, and it would be enough to drastically change me and my children's life. He had agreed to push my song and make me the next hot artist, but I had already made up my mind. I didn't want to work with Johnny. I didn't even want to see him again. There was no way that I was going to walk around every day like nothing happened. I had to do that my entire life. Every family reunion and graduation, I was good on that part of the game. I didn't care who he was, and much less for what he had. I was sure that I could have gotten more money from Johnny in a civil suit after criminal investigation, but the risk of becoming a target was so great. Not only was I a target, but Johnny's attorneys had already threatened to have my parole violated for extortion if they ever heard anything about the R word case again. This was another reason I needed Phaedra's guidance, but she had completely rid herself of me. Her lifestyle had changed from the old days of being a crook. She just refused to help me. She gave me all the direction in the world when we had legal dealings, but the rules of the games had changed. I wasn't privy to the rule book anymore. So I did what I had to do, what I thought was best for my children and myself, and I went with that. I met Johnny at the Fulton County Library, signed an agreement not to prosecute, and took the money. I used that money to make moves, and after relocating my family to another home, I purchased a new vehicle and took my babies to the beach in Florida. And I also published my first book, Life Beyond These Walls, which I had written while I was in prison. Dr. Alveda King, a pro-life activist, was instrumental in providing me with some much necessary help along the way. I had pretty much given up on my career, my rap career rather, after that incident. I was too apprehensive and didn't want to do music anymore. Johnny had not only R-worded me, but he had also snatched my dreams away from me. The only thing that I wanted to do now was share my story with young women. I had experienced and survived just about every hurt known to the human being. I got on the telephone that day and called all over the city until I found a program for young women that would give me an opportunity to volunteer my services. When I first met Dr. Alveda King, the niece of the slain civil rights leader, Dr. Martin Luther King, she was counseling at a pregnancy crisis center for teen girls. I shared my life story with her, and she was completely blown away. Dr. King's mission is to fight every day for the lives of children. She looked at me as a child. As a child, I needed to be born again. She promised me the first day that I met her that she was going to help me get my life on track, and she did. She immediately began my healing process by allowing me to help the young women in her center. I never knew that my life story would prove to be so rewarding. The day that I visited with Dr. King in her office, I changed the focus of my whole existence. Okay. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So this is the last chapter, chapter 11. All right, chapter 11, the ultimate betrayal. All right, this is the last chapter. Y'all enjoying? Y'all still hanging in there? All 197 of you guys, y'all enjoying so far? You can put it in the chat. Let's go. Before this book, and over the last few years of my life had been a constant struggle. Becoming one with me, myself, and forgiving I proved to be a much harder task than I thought it would ever be. The process of reconciliation wore on me and almost took me out. Trying to suppress all of my bad memories was harder than remembering them. Dr. King kept her promise, and she remained very active in my life, helping me see past my pain. Dr. King gave me a newfound love for misguided and mistreated children throughout the world. She single-handedly guided me to a to a safer place. My first book signing for the book Life Beyond These Walls was at the Martin Luther King Center in Atlanta, Georgia. I chose that title rather because I knew that you could be locked behind mental walls in your mind, but just walls made of concrete, not just walls of concrete. I felt so honored. Dr. King made one call and it was done. She put me on a pedestal. She showed me that I had worth. Miss Lorna Murphy showed up in addition to the other parole officers that I had over the course of my 3 years, Tammy Boone and Amy Roberts. My old boss from GDOT, Princess, showed up, and her boss, Rachel Brown, did as well. All of these people came out and they showed their support. My cousin Angie and other people who not only believed in me but knew I deserved a second chance came out as well. I could never have thanked them enough. These were the people who truly helped me. Their belief in me, along with my faith, equaled success. Of course, Phaedra never showed her face, and I was very disappointed, but not at all surprised. In fact, the last time I spoke to Phaedra was when Johnny R-worded me in June of 2008. I often wondered about Phaedra and how her life turned out. Every time that I would think of her, my brain would quickly remind me that she had gone on with her life. And I had done the same thing. Phaedra wanted to leave the dirty deeds of our past in the past. That was understandable to me. I wouldn't wish what I had gone through on my worst enemy. Sharing my story as a preventative method to keep young women from making the same mistakes was a proven success. It took me almost 32 years to realize that, and not a mistake, that my life had true meaning. I had value. After almost 32 years, I found my purpose. There were countless counseling sessions and being taught to think after the thought. I finally found my peace within. I was now able to live my life as a normal adult. I was finally able to love my children, love my life, and not resent anything about my life ever. This was my life now, and that had finally put all the negativity in my past. Then I caught the first episode of Real Housewives of Atlanta on Bravo Television Network. The episode I saw aired on November 28, 2010. It was always my presumption that Phaedra, here it comes, that Phaedra had moved on with her life, distancing herself from the criminal enterprise. I assumed that she was now on the straight and narrow. So I was in total state of shock when I learned that she married Apollo. Apollo was my criminal partner, our criminal partner. As I watched the show, girl, I was about to die. I mean, massive heart attack pains ran through my left arm. I knew damn well that I didn't just see Everett driving them to the hospital from Savannah, Georgia, when she had the baby. Oh, and please don't let me forget how Everett had everybody featured on the show from the Federal Halfway House when the Rolls Royce picked him up for Phaedra and Apollo's wedding. Hold up, wait a minute, bitch. You sent a Rolls Royce to pick this man up from the halfway house when my children and I lived in a shelter? What the hell? I found myself shouting at the television. Then I started wondering about my relationship with Phaedra after I was busted. Do you know how many times I called this broad? How many times I have reached out to her? No, really. I don't beg and I don't run behind anybody, but she could have reached out to me. Why was the entire gang there except me? I know for a fact that I had earned my stripes. Was this real, man? I mean, was this shit happening in my face? Phaedra had not moved on with her life at all. She was still involved with these people, which meant she only distanced herself from me. But why only me? After doing more research, I learned that while Everett Tripodis was in the halfway house, and before he got released from federal prison, he worked as a paralegal at her law firm. Wait a goddamn minute. Now let me get this shit straight. I'm sorry, Mama King, for cursing, But please let me get this moment. Okay, so Phaedra was a slick bitch. I knew this because she taught me how to be smooth. Phaedra married Apollo so he couldn't testify against her, and of course, she masterminded getting his life on track upon his release from prison. She gave Everett, Apollo's street brother, and our partner in crime a job as a paralegal working for her law firm. She did nothing for my children or for me, but I had sacrificed and lost everything. Did not fit into this equation anywhere, Phaedra. What about me? Why didn't she help me? Check this out right. For those of you that feel like she doesn't owe me anything, I really could care less how you feel about what you think. But for the sake of arguments, let's consider for this moment. When she was the ringleader, we had agreed an unwritten contract. The verbal agreement was that if I ever got caught, that Phaedra would represent me. Phaedra Parks didn't do that, nor did she even try. Phaedra Parks, an attorney who studied law, could have truly cared less. She knew what was going on, and she knew what was going to happen to me if I ever got caught. Once the law nabbed me, she sat back and did nothing. It was one of my hardest lessons in life. There was no honor among thieves. Then I started working, and then I started thinking things again like I always do. I began to play the course of our relationship through my mind over and over again. Things started to finally make sense to me after that. I remembered when I first arrived in Clayton County Jail when I was pregnant and Phaedra ignored my calls. I remembered the conversation with Attorney Freeman. That was the only reason that she showed up. I believe that he forced her to because he didn't want to be involved. So she had no choice. And I remembered my federal trial when she said that it was a conflict of interest. I remembered Everett's lawyer telling Judge Evans that I was the mastermind. I was the fall guy for the entire operation. Phaedra was never my friend, and she had a plan for me the moment she met me. Once it dawned on me how I had been played, I cried helplessly. I hadn't cried that much since the death of my mother. She even went to my mother's funeral and stood over her unalived body. Phaedra stole my moment. That was my moment. I was supposed to be there standing over my mother, not Phaedra, damn it. And as I continued to watch the show week after week, I realized that Phaedra I realized that Phaedra never had a care in the world for my children or me. She used me, and she had used my life as a stepping stone for her greed and gain. She is such a greedy bitch. Every time that show aired, I was sure to tune in so I could listen closely to her opening statement. I'm the ultimate Southern belle. I always get what I want. This was Phaedra's whole demeanor. She believed that everyone and everything served only beneath her. This all opened my eyes and led me to my realizations. That was exactly how she viewed me. I was beneath her. I was a dummy and an ignorant fool that would never realize what hit me. You got me good, Phaedra, just like Curtis had gotten my mother. The more I watched the show, the angrier I became, and the more counseling I needed. I was about to check myself into a mental hospital when I watched the episode of her giving birth to her baby. I couldn't help it. I started having flashbacks and going to that dark place. I vividly remembered the day that I gave birth to my baby, handcuffed to a bed. Phaedra had her family there with all the cameras and the producers of the show there to support her. I had nothing and no one there to support me. This just wasn't fair and not on my level. Phaedra is something else, y'all. I swear I kind of see her differently now. I'm sorry. Let's continue, child. Let's continue. All right, so the episode when the forgotten member of Destiny's Child strolled on Phaedra's office crying about how she had been to jail and just wanted to get her life together, Phaedra had the audacity to cry. Are you serious right now, Phaedra? Then she said she had the golden touch and promised that young lady that she would assist her in getting her life back together. Oh my God. That was just too much for me to handle. Then there was an episode where she left her baby for the first time to go to work, and then she cried. How about you walk a day in my shoes and let's see how many tears you shed, Phaedra? My newborn baby was taken from me the moment she was born. And where were you then, Phaedra Parks? Miss King had to console me. Lord, help me, please. My battle wasn't over. It was years later, and I was still fighting for my life. I had been framed like Roger Rabbit. That was one of my favorite movies as a kid. I watched it over and over, but never once did I imagine that it would happen to me. It was taking everything in my power to keep me from popping up on Phaedra's doorstep, no lie, especially when I thought of her standing in my spot, disrespecting my mother's remains. In my mind, it was as if she had walked straight up to the casket and spat right in my mother's face. When I thought about everything that I had lost, everything that she had taken from me, that was my breaking point. I couldn't take it. I had to pull myself together and write it out. Phaedra knew you. Hold on. Phaedra, you knew. Hold on. Phaedra, I knew you would be reading this book along with millions of other people throughout the world. And I want all of you to know that this was not done out of vengeance, but solely based on justice. Justice is the thing that America has founded on, and God said vengeance is his. Enough said. Phaedra was a genius at creating illusions. She masterminded the perfect crime against the federal government, and everybody involved served prison time except her. No, she never put a pow pow to my head. She never made me do anything. I accepted my faults and I paid my debt to society. But what about how she used me to destroy my life? At the time of our campaign of crimes, she was a sworn officer of the law. She had taken an oath to uphold a certain standard. She knew exactly what would happen if I were to ever get caught. Phaedra Parks didn't. Phaedra Parks just didn't care. She had me working during my pregnancies without any regard to my children's well-being or mine. Phaedra never cared or considered how they would end up. Why would she help everyone else rebuild his life or her life, but not reach out to help me? My life had been destroyed, and she played a major role in the destruction. I called her when my children and I were living in a homeless shelter. I reached out to her on several occasions, and she never once lifted a finger to help us. I have one question for Phaedra. My mind remains boggled, and I need to know the reason that you were at my mother's funeral when I know that you obviously didn't care. Well, I shouldn't expect an honest answer, but I know the truth. It was only Phaedra's ploy to make sure I never implicated her in any of the crimes that she masterminded. Ooh, child. Mm-mm-mm. It was a tactic that she used to persuade me that she was a true friend and was indeed on my side. But what type of monster finds joy in other people's pain? I called just about every attorney in the city of Atlanta pleading my case, and I knew that I could get her in a civil suit. But every attorney claimed that the statute of limitations would hurt my case. I didn't buy that, and I knew the truth. All of a sudden, that secret society among lawyers did exist. The one Phaedra told me that she would use if I ever got caught. It was meant only to work for her and never intended for me. I could have begun to tell you how many attorneys I took my case to because I wanted to expose Phaedra for who she was. I even reached out to Goldie Taylor. This time, I went in depth about my prior relationship with Phaedra, and I told her about my new manuscript, and I had completed and asked her if she could help me. She explained that she had just attended Phaedra's wedding and that I would never make it as a writer. 5 minutes later, I received a telephone call from Apollo. Goldie must have given him my number to give to Phaedra. Hold on. Goldie must have given my number to him and Phaedra. I had just changed it the day before, and besides, my husband, hold on. I had just changed it the day before, and besides, my husband Goldie, what? That don't make no sense. Goldie was the first person that I had given my new number. I don't know what that husband part was. That's what's in the book, though. Apollo was interested in making things go away. Our conversation was short and brief. I felt that if anyone should be calling me, it should be Phaedra Parks. I had no desire to speak to Apollo. He found out when I hung up in his face at that moment, I started to wonder if Phaedra was the real reason that Goldie had dropped me a few years back after she promised to function as my itinerary agent. Shocked but not surprised by Goldie's actions, I kept pressing. A few days later, I spoke with a reputable attorney who was a friend of my great friend. He told me to file a complaint with someone at the State Bar of Georgia. I filed a complaint. It was about 33 pages long and took them 6 weeks to arrive at the decision. My complaint was dismissed. They made reference, as everyone else had done, that there was a statute of limitations. Legally, there was nothing to be done. During this time, I began receiving prank calls on my phone, prank calls from DFACs claiming that my children were being abused, and threats were made against my life. I had awakened a sleeping demon. It was once again a battle of the Armageddon, the fight for my life. Phaedra Parks broke several rules governed by the State Bar of Georgia. Rule 1.2, scope of representation. From the website of the State Bar of Georgia states that a lawyer shall not counsel a client to engage in conduct that the lawyer knows is criminal or fraudulent, nor knowingly assist a client in such conduct, but a lawyer may discuss the legal consequences of any proposed course of conduct with client, and may counsel or assist a client to make good faith an effort to determine the validity, scope, meaning, or application of the law. Rule 4.1, truthfully in statements to others. A lawyer is required to be truthful when dealing with others on a client's behalf, but genuinely has no affirmative duty to inform an opposing party of relevant facts. A misrepresentation can occur if the lawyer incorporates or affirms a statement of other person that the lawyer knows is false. Misrepresentations can occur by failure to act. Misconduct, it shall be a violation of the Georgia rule of professional conduct for a lawyer to violate or attempt to violate the Georgia rule of professional conduct, knowingly assist or induce another to do so, or to do so through the act of another. Number 2, to be convicted of a felony. Number 3, to be convicted as a misdemeanor involving a moral turpitude where the underlying conduct relates to the lawyer's fitness to practice law. Number 4, engage in professional conduct, dishonesty, fraud, deceit, or misrepresentation. The maximum penalty for the violation of Rule 8.5 is the maximum penalty of specific rule violated. The maximum penalty, so it's just going through, what is this? It's just all of the rules and regulations. Hold on. Oh, it's getting to the end. So this is just reading about all. I'll read it though. I'll read it. In the court of public opinion, this would be an open and shut case. Slam dunk. The truth being that obvious. I don't understand and will never understand how a person sworn to uphold the law could involve in criminal racketeering schemes which were carried out against the federal government, and this person continued to practice law in the state. During the process of completing this book, I dreamed of a huge black snake inside of my bedroom wrapping around my ceiling. I was aware the snake was a representation of the enemy that I was fighting. I knew that a snake in my bedroom suggested that this was personal. I couldn't fathom why the snake was above me and not under my feet where it should be. Phaedra seemed to be untouchable and all the way above the law. But with this book, I would like to pull that snake down from over my head and put it under my feet where it belongs. Come on now. Besides, my mama told me that the only way to unalive a snake is by chopping the head off and exposing Phaedra for her wickedness and showing the world just how much of a snake she was. I have reclaimed my life, giving life to the disadvantaged children, and helping the world heal was my other goal. The enemy who constantly tried to destroy my life has lost the fight again. But God opens doors that no man can close, and he closes doors that no man can open. People of the world, the Bible tells us that even though Satan disguises himself as an angel of light, and to beware of the wolves in sheep's clothing, my story is a true story of betrayal. I have struggled just about I have struggled just about my entire life because no one would listen to my words. But right now, the world hears me, and now my life has meaning. Okay. So that is the end of the book, you guys. What do y'all think? So now I'm gonna just show you guys. Let's see. Let me show you guys the. Hold on. Okay, yeah. Let's show you guys the court documents that I uploaded. These are the court documents that she put in her book. All right. So, did y'all enjoy the book? Phaedra pretty much got away with the shit because of who she knows. So she was able to build a huge platform of people that was able to stand behind her. So Phaedra was the mastermind according to Angela Stanton. Okay, so that's her on the screen. That's Angela. All right. So these are, of course, I had to take, So this is where Phaedra Parks actually sued Angela in a civil action suit when Angela made it very clear that she was coming forward to talk about and expose Phaedra. Okay, it says it comes now to defendant Angela Stanton and files this motion in limit to admit certain evidence pertaining to a liability to plaintiff claim to damage to reputation as follows. So this is what Phaedra is claiming, that Angela is trying to damage her reputation. This is so fucking crazy. It says that defendant Stanton defamed her in her book of lies of a Real Housewife by writing that Parks was involved in criminal enterprises, that Parks was a dishonest attorney, and that Parks revealed to Stanton her sexual proclivities. Parks has not identified any specific economic loss arising from Stanton's book. Rather, she has testified that the damages that she seeks are general damages related to her reputation. Okay. Stanton primarily Stanton's primary defenses at trial will be that the allegations are in her book, pretty much. Okay. So, all right. So here's another copy here. The United States District Court, as you guys can see, for the Northern District of Georgia, Atlantic Division. So on this one is the guy Everett. You guys remember the guy that we talked about. This is the court documents with Everett, aka Edward Sourley, aka Melvin Dudley, aka Angela Stanton. That's her on there, aka Regina, aka Danielle Cato. These are the people who worked under Phaedra, according to what she was saying. Sheree Nicole Strickland, aka Nicole Thompson. So these are people that y'all remember they were helping with going to the DMV, the Sheree girl, who she said was her friend or her cousin or somebody that was going into the DMV getting the falsified documents, and she got caught at the DMV. Remember? I think that's on part 2 of the reading of the book. All right. It says that from this day, from a day unknown to the grand jury, but sometimes after about August 22nd of 2003, and not later than or on or about December 2023, within the Northern District of Georgia, defendant Everett Jerome something, aka Mark Bali, aka damn, he got a bunch of AKAs, did conceal, store, and possess a stolen motor vehicle that is a 2002 Mercedes-Benz Q500 vehicle identification number. It gives that, knowing the motor vehicle to have been stolen, and said vehicle borrowing across a state boundary after being stolen, and that vehicle was stolen in the state of, and it just goes into that. So these are just documents that were in Angela's book that she showed. All right. And I just kind of took pictures to show you guys. State Bar of Georgia. This is a grievance confidential, where you see where she signed up here, Miss Angela Stanton, and then right here, name of the attorney that she filed the bar paperwork on Phaedra C. Parks, Esquire. Okay, it gives her address of the attorney right there. So she filed some papers for the bar to have Phaedra disbarred. As you guys can see, that's the documents right there. Okay, this is in Angela Stanton's book. I just took a few pictures. All right. All right, so this is from the book. This is what is this? In Superior Court of Clayton County, state of Georgia, the state of Georgia versus Angela Stanton, the defendant, certificate of service. Okay, I hereby certify that I have the to this day served this district attorney of Clayton County. I can barely read this because it's all motion to modify her sentence. Okay. So as you guys can see, it's signed off there. And y'all see down here who was actually representing her during that time, the Parks Group, which is Phaedra's lawyers and attorneys practice right here, the Parks Group. Okay. It gives the address, Spring Street. Okay. So she won't lie, and everything she was saying that she gave very detailed information. Okay. So let's stop sharing. But all of that is in her book. That is the end of the book. Okay. I feel like the book was very informational. I'm just gonna say this, Angela, you guys, Angela grew up pretty much struggling like anyone in her position, and she kind of ran into someone who saw her hunger and kind of used it to their advantage to kind of present a too good to be true get rich quick scheme, which Angela actually jumped on, and she kind of needed money and made her a promise to kind of look out for her when she really didn't have the she really didn't have, I guess, the intentions of doing that. And when I say she, I mean Phaedra. I don't feel like Phaedra did it. I feel like she chose someone who she knew was very hungry and would get out there and commit something for her so that she could sit prim and proper in the office and look like she didn't have nothing to do with the shit. Okay. And I feel like it was all mastermind. You guys saw Apollo's brother. If you guys go back to the actual episode, and I remember it to be exact, y'all remember when Apollo got that drill and came after Phaedra in the garage at their home, and Apollo had to turn himself in. Y'all remember that white BMW that Apollo drove up in? That was one of the cars in question, okay? That was also said to be one of the cars where the VIN numbers had been scraped off. Do you guys remember the guy that rolled up on the motorcycle? That's Apollo's brother that they're talking about in this particular book, where Phaedra was telling Bun, she was calling him Bun as a nickname, but that's the same guy. She was saying, Bun, come and get Apollo and make sure he don't come back here now, or I'm gonna have to go ahead and call the feds on him. So Phaedra pretty much was trying to keep people up out of, keep people up where she wanted them to be, placing where she wanted them to be, so that she could keep the heat off of her, because she knew what she would be facing had her ass got caught. Okay. I kind of see Phaedra differently. I ain't gonna hold you. I kind of see her differently. So you guys remember when Angela got caught in Tennessee for taking the cars there to go and pick up some other cars to trade them in. And once she gave the wrong information about her city, state, and zip for her birth, y'all remember they asked her, where were you born? And she gave the wrong information during that time she was pregnant. You guys remember? And they wound up having to run up out of there because the feds were called, at which they wound up getting caught and arrested. I don't know. It just gives that people who are manipulators, they kind of seek out people who are wounded and kind of have a level of desperation in order to control them and use them for their own selfish gain, kind of like what Phaedra did with these people. It gives that she was the mastermind. It's always been said that Phaedra is very intelligent, that she's smart, that she passed the bar on her first try. And you guys all know that she also dibble and dabbles in several different jobs. And I feel like she does that in order to kind of keep eyes off of her in terms of maybe illegal activities that she may be doing, because a lot of people are like, oh, she ain't committing no crime, she's an attorney, she's she kind of works with she's a mortician, she's all these other things. So I feel like she was hiding behind these jobs and these many jobs that she say she was doing in order to keep this enterprise going, because there was a lot of money that was exchanged. And if you guys saw where Phaedra lives, she lives a very, very plush life. And Phaedra has not done any cases, you guys. They say she has not really represented anybody since Bobby Brown. And y'all know how far back that was. So my question is, what the fuck is Phaedra doing besides just television right now? Okay, I feel like she got into television to kind of keep her hands clean of this situation, but Phaedra was never going to actually go out there and get in the trenches and do all the shit that she allegedly had other people doing to keep her hands clean. I mean, she kind of ordered her entourage to do all this shit because she knew the consequences that would come behind that and how much time would have to be served had her ass got caught being out there. So she used other people who she knew was hungry and needed that fast money, and that's what she did. Apollo, I feel like, was a plant in this entire situation, and Phaedra also used Apollo as well. And as you guys saw heard in the book, where Angela said that the only reason that Phaedra married Apollo was so that he so that he would not testify against her, and vice versa. So that whole situation, as you guys know, their marriage was a complete farce. You never really saw them being now that I go back and look at the episodes on Real Housewives of Atlanta, you really never saw them being romantic. It was just understood that they were married, and that's just what it was. And Apollo, you guys remember the episode, and we talked about this before, when Apollo bought Phaedra the brand new Mercedes, and she told him she didn't want the car, she wasn't taking the car. Would that not be here? That was kind of weird to me, because I was like, if my husband bought me a Mercedes, I mean, shit, I'm taking it. So it was kind of weird to watch on the show where she kept telling him, no, get this car out of my driveway. I don't want this car, Apollo. And now we know why, because it was one of those hot cars that they were taking and scratching off those VIN numbers. And Phaedra was like, I ain't about to be buying that shit and get pulled over and lose everything that I got, my law license and everything else behind this shit. But my question now is, now that Apollo and his now wife are headed for divorce, because Shireen also knows some things about Phaedra and the things that have happened, because Apollo has pillow talked with her and told her the things that have gone on behind the scenes. So my question is, now that Apollo and Shireen are getting divorced, will Shireen snitch out on Phaedra? And will Apollo ever snitch out on Phaedra? That's my question. Do you guys think that Apollo would ever snitch on Phaedra about said situation? Because his grievance was the same as Angela's, in terms of saying that Phaedra never came to see him when he was locked up in prison. She never wrote him. She never brought his children to see him. She pretty much forgot about him like she did Angela. So that is who the fuck she is. Phaedra did not give a fuck about Apollo when he was locked up, and he said it several times. You pretty much forgot about me. You didn't come to see me, which is why he started fooling with Shireen, because Shireen showed him attention. Shireen would come and see him. Shireen would put money on his books. Phaedra would made it very clear, I'm not coming up there. I'm not coming to see you, and I'm not bringing you no money to put on no fucking books, and I damn sure not bringing my kids there. And I remember when Candy Burrs even said, hey, look, I had a family member that was locked up, and their kids went to the jail to see them. You can take them kids up there to see Apollo. But Phaedra stood firm on she's not taking her kids to any prison to see no damn Apollo. And he was pissed about that shit. He was very pissed about that. And of course, Apollo had to pay restitution for his crimes when he was arrested multiple times for fraud through this entire enterprise that they say Phaedra was running as well. But of course, you guys know in Angela Stanton's book, because she has two or three books to be exact, out where she is ratting out Phaedra. Phaedra did try to file a cease and desist to shut Angela up, but that shit didn't work, because Angela still put her book out, as you guys know, because we just read the shit. So Angela ratted everybody out that was involved in the entire enterprise, and including her baby daddy, Shahid, who is serving a prison sentence for life, as you guys know, for unaliving several people now, according to what we've actually seen. Okay. But Angela losing her mom actually showed her just how much Phaedra was not on her side, because Phaedra used that moment, and I believe Phaedra did not want her to come there to that damn funeral, because she didn't want any ties or anybody seeing the comfortability between she and Angela Stanton. I think she wanted to keep as much distance as she could between her and Angela, because she didn't want people looking at her like, well, maybe Phaedra got something to do with this. And a few times that she did talk to Angela, it was kind of like on the phone, off the phone, and not so much to where they could kind of attach Phaedra to anything. But then again, Phaedra knew people inside and outside of the system, so she was able to cover herself, and she kind of left everybody else out to dry, according to what the book says. Okay, so what do you guys think about this book? What do y'all? This was so juicy. My mouth is still on the floor. I'm sorry. My mouth is still on the floor. Do you guys want to do a panel to kind of talk about it? We can, because it's very juicy. It is very juicy. I'll put the link down. I'll drop the link if you guys want to come up and talk about it, because it's so much. My God. Oh my God. If y'all want to come up, honey, we can. We can have a little talk, because it's still early. It's only 8:50. All right. If y'all want to come up, come on up, child. Let's talk. This would be a very good movie. Okay. Yes, it would. Angela should definitely turn this into a movie, and maybe change the names, because Phaedra gonna be coming for her full speed ahead, baby. If Phaedra name pop up on the screen in this damn movie. But this would be an awesome movie. I would definitely watch that shit. But there's the link if you guys want to come up and have a conversation and talk about what you think about the book. Of course, there's 3 parts that we actually read here. I'm trying to read it all of it in one at one time, but I had to go and get my son, so we've got 3 parts. Okay, so part 1 is chapters 1 through 5. Part 2 is chapters 6 through 7. 6 through 9. And part 3 is 9 through 11. Okay. Or 10 through 11. So yeah, so that's it, guys. So there's the link. If you guys want to come up, I'll sit here and we can have a conversation. If not, then we'll go ahead and get off. Okay. Y'all say the book was very good. Y'all said the book was very good. Says sounds like a Lifetime movie. Oh God, yeah. Okay, maybe a Nubian or two. Yeah, maybe she should reach out to Mel and be like, hey, I want to, turn my book into a movie. Can I put it on Nubian Network? That would be nice. I think the ratings for that would be way up there because the book is very interesting. So I would love to see how they would turn this into a movie, child, and make it so juicy. I would love that. Says Apollo couldn't stand her. I know that shit right. All right, we got Miss Eliza, Miss Tia Lees. I'm sorry, Miss Tia Lees. How you doing? How you feel about the book, ma'am?
Oh no, Caramel. How you doing? First of all, how you doing
I'm
today?
good. I'm good.
I don't know. I'm on the fence. Okay, so there's a few things that kind of stand out to me that make me question her.
Mhm. Okay.
Um, I'm not gonna say Phaedra hands are clean by no stretch of the imagination.
Okay.
She perhaps
Okay. Go ahead. I'm listening. Are you there? Tia Lees, are you there?
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Something happened. I'm not sure. Go ahead.
Okay, I don't know why my screen went off. But yeah, I said I was gonna go back and listen to the part one again.
Mm-hmm.
But so a few things that stand out for me with it. And like I said, I think Phaedra may have had a part in it. And I understand Phaedra is smart and everything,
Yeah.
but she got to be really smart to keep escaping stuff between this situation, Apollo, everything else. It's like, okay, wait a minute. Now, is she Houdini or what? Because how is she always not getting caught up? But a few things that stand out for me with Angela, first of all, she's a Trump supporter. So I'm gonna have to deduct 50 points from her, just from that. So
Okay.
I question anybody in the year of the Lord 2025 that's still on there.
Okay.
Um, then looking at her upbringing, I know somebody that I feel like could be Angela, this girl I
Mm-hmm.
know from growing up.
Mm-hmm.
They may even be related because we all from Georgia. Well, I know she's not from Georgia, but she grew up in Georgia.
Right.
Her and this girl I'm talking about, they probably could be related. But just hearing about her troubled childhood, her mama mental ill issues, and no, nothing too much on that. But it's just just an observation that perhaps she may have some too. And then
Mm-hmm.
it's just with all the name dropping, it just seemed like she was after something that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't quite panning out. And then another thing about her, all this Phaedra this, Phaedra this, Phaedra this. If Phaedra had done all this stuff and landed you in prison, why are you
Mm-hmm.
still calling her after you get out for advice? And you need to talk to Phaedra. Like, you always need to consult Phaedra. So it seemed like a little bit of a obsession.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like maybe she had some things going on that Phaedra decided to remove herself away from. Because on
Right.
one hand, she want Phaedra to tell her about her mom's funeral. On the other hand, you mad because Phaedra was there. It's like, girl, make up your mind. Which one are you today? Are you Angela, Angelita, Angelica, Angel? Who are you today? I mean, is
I
she
think she
related
was more
to
so bitter too. I think she was more so bitter too as after she watched her on the show to see that she actually made it and that she kind of, was making all this money and trying to reach out and help other people after she promised her. I think she was more upset that Phaedra didn't keep her promise
well, see, that's what
after
I'm saying.
everything kind of went down.
Yeah, I feel like she was chasing fame and she was mad that Phaedra got it, but I just still feel like there's just something about that. So I'm
Right.
not saying it's right, it's wrong. I'm just saying something just not settled with me on that part. But
Mm-hmm.
and then she went name dropping all these other people and stuff. And it's like, okay, girl, what was you really, I mean, you trying to be a rapper at what, 45? Or I mean, really, what was going on with you? I mean, you get out of prison.
Right.
We know people lose time with that, but like, what
Mm-hmm.
really was going on? I just need a part two of this, and I want to hear. I would love to hear her and Phaedra at the same time.
I
Give
don't
a
think that'll
account
happen
of
because I think Phaedra Child is trying to stay far away from this girl because she is
yeah,
literally trying to expose the hell out of Phaedra. Phaedra like, I ain't talking to you. I don't think she'll
she
ever get a
is. She
conversation
is.
out of Phaedra.
But has Phaedra said anything about this other
The
than
only
trying to
thing
get
that I
this
know
into
of
the
is when
system?
Phaedra filed a lawsuit against her for cease and desist and for defamation. She did file a defamation lawsuit against her for X amount of thousands of dollars, which the girl didn't even have the money anyway, which was so stupid. But I think it was more so to try to make her shut up and not speak on her, because Phaedra has this reputation in these Atlanta streets and everywhere else, and she didn't want to be exposed, obviously. So obviously it didn't work, because the book is out, and there's several other books where she's talking about Phaedra and Apollo and other people too. She don't give a hot damn. She's telling everybody. She's telling on everybody.
Right. Yeah. And one more question, then I'm gonna get out your hair.
You
I
good?
know that she got King as her last name. Did she marry somebody in the King family? I know that came up like in the book or whatever.
She
Or did
got
she
married,
just,
but I'm not sure
go
if
out
it
there and
was
choose a last
somebody.
name?
I'm not sure if it's someone. It might be. It could be, because her last name is well, she's going by Angela Stanton, so I
Yes,
don't
that,
see King. I don't see King
but
on
it's
there.
going most things I see say, yeah, I see
Is this
Stanton dash
recent?
King. So I'm like, okay.
Is this recent where
Yeah.
she has King on her name? I'm gonna have to look
Yeah,
that
this is
up.
like in her recent political stuff. In her
Oh, okay.
recent political stuff, she got King at the end. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, the book that we just read
And like
is
I said,
forwarded by the lady that we talked about in this said book, named Alveda King. So Alveda did actually help her get this book out, because it says forward by Dr. Alveda King. So she did help her put the book out. She actually helped her
okay,
put the book
all right. Well, I don't know. Let me see. She just look, as my mom would say, Angela don't sit right in my spirit.
out.
But
Yeah,
that's neither here nor there.
yeah,
But thank
yeah.
you for letting me come up. And I was trying to tell you that the last time, but girl, I think I had went on mute and everything, and
Oh,
I didn't know
okay.
what I was doing.
I hope you
But
guys
thank
enjoy
you.
my reading skills, and y'all pardon me for stumbling over a few words, child. I was trying to keep it at a steady flow so you guys can understand what was going on. Okay,
Oh
but
no,
thank you.
today. In fact, I put a comment that I need you to read my 1,500-page manual to me right now because I'm studying for a test. And yeah, you can bring your reading skills because, honey, I was engaged.
Really?
I even had
Oh,
my
well,
husband
thank
listening.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you. I love
yeah.
reading, though. I love
All right,
reading.
I'm going.
Okay, thank you so much.
All
Come
right,
on up,
y'all.
Miss
I'm gonna get out.
Justice. No problem. Have a good day, okay? Come
You
on up,
too.
Miss Justice. How you feel, ma'am? Let's unmute her so she can talk. How you doing, Justice? Let's unmute her.
Yeah, I'm here. Uh-huh.
Go
Hi.
ahead. How you
Yeah,
feel?
I'm good. I'm good. I enjoyed this story. And I want to emphasize the fact that it is just that, a story. Before we crucify Phaedra, we got to remember that we're dealing with a person who is admitted a criminal.
Mm-hmm.
And she's angry that Phaedra didn't think about her children.
Mm-hmm.
I'm angry that she didn't think about her children.
Yeah, that too. I
Yeah.
feel
Uh-huh. So, I mean, why are you expecting someone else to care more about your children than you do?
you.
And
Mm.
on the show, I remember that when Apollo went in and all that, the motorcycle hit over at Candy's house and all that. But the storyline was that Apollo and his people had this ring going. And not to say that Phaedra didn't know about it, but I don't believe that and my reason for this stance is that the feds are 99.9% conviction. If you got dirt under your nails, they gonna find it.
They're gonna find you.
That's right. So I want to emphasize the fact that this is a story. Before we crucify Phaedra, while this lady is quoting Bible and Bible and Bible, what about bring up a child in the way they should go? Why
Ooh.
not be a better example than going to prison? And then when you come out, you choose again with that criminal mind, all
Mm.
that biblical quoting, you choose again to go back to what I know best.
Mm.
What happened to conviction on God this and I'm changing my life and my children? I still got my children, but
Mm.
you choose to go back to what you know best. So
Yeah.
I got a problem with that. And I got a problem with the fact that uh if if Phaedra was involved in any way, just the knowing of what her husband was doing, and because Phaedra is smart enough to keep her hands clean if she even knew about it. But my understanding was this was totally Apollo gig. This was his thing. This is how he brought in the big bucks. This is how he matched her. That
Yeah.
was my understanding during that time. But if she knew about it,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and my thing is, why is she held to a standard that you're not held to because you got caught? Why is she guilty for being a smart participant and
Right.
you were being a stupid participant? Because if you're going to engage in organized crime, which is what they said it was on the show, wouldn't you have your attorney in place? How you Apollo, for all we know, we don't know. All we know is what she wrote in this book. We don't know if Apollo didn't tell her, if any else get caught, my wife is a lawyer. We don't know that.
Hmm.
We don't know that. So we cannot just and I'm telling you something else that is a red flag for me too. Phaedra filed defamation on you. That means if I file this here, you got an opportunity to sing like a mockingbird. I ain't scared of that. Come on, let's go. She filed that. She
Hmm.
didn't threaten to do it. She legally filed a document that gave you an opportunity to stand up and defend what you're saying. What
Hmm.
happened to that? What did you go to court on that? Did you back down? What happened? I think there's some selective omissions in the
Hmm.
story. And one thing is for sure, jealousy is an evil cellmate. You
Yeah.
get to looking at somebody on TV living their best life and they did this and that, and you were part of their husband's organization and they not helping you when he promised. Just because you say she said it don't mean she said it. I'm pro Phaedra on this because this is a criminal story and every criminal lies.
Hey, I like hearing different perspectives. Okay, I like to hear that. Go. One person saying, "Hey, Phaedra ain't jack for this," and then you come in and then you kind of give it a different way and a different view of us to kind of look at it. And I kind of see it both ways. So I'm just like,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. My thing is the biggest pro Phaedra entity for me is the feds.
Hmm.
They are smart, man. They smart. They lay low the same way they watched him and how they picked him up and knew he had went to this place and that place and this and that and all the way she missed. And you spoke yourself on how she said, "I'm not bringing my sons to no prison. I call the people to come." She sent the feds over to Candace's house to get that motorcycle. If and hot tempered and angry as he was and teed off as he would have implicated her. He ain't trying to save her.
I think the reason why he never did was because of those kids. And I keep saying it, like he did not want her to be locked up with him. So I feel like he went ahead and took the fall. Maybe it was understood or an agreement between the two of them that he would go and he would spend that time, being that he's already spent time before, and that
But
she would stay
it
out and keep the kids and do what needed
yeah,
to be
and
done.
that sounds like a good theory, except for the fact if I'm gonna take the fall and we got an agreement, why you ain't putting no commissary on my book? Why you ain't doing nothing to help me while I'm locked up here? Which you said he reached out to this other woman because she was there for him. Well,
He was.
we got an agreement now. Come on,
Mm-hmm.
and her mama who lived with her in this big fine mansion will take care of the kids. No, you going down with me. You ain't bringing me no cigarettes. You ain't giving me nothing. No, this ain't what we agreed to. And the way he came for her with that drill, he don't care about the children. The kids didn't hold him back with that drill. Mm-mm. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. I say this is an angry person who suffered the consequences of criminal activity and wants to take the person who rose above it, whether they knew or not. You want to take them down with, you want to punish them for doing good or getting away with whatever. I'm not
So
saying
what do
she
you
had
think about
nothing to
the
do.
part? But what do you think, Justice? What do you think about the part where Angela in the book says that Apollo called her? It was towards the end that I read where she said Apollo called her and said, "Let's try to work this out." Like because she was doing all this talking and trying to call around and getting Phaedra in trouble, and Apollo found out about it through the what is it, the Alveda King lady that was trying to
Mhm.
help with the book. What do you think about Apollo reaching out to Angela Stanton and asking her, "Hey, is there something that we can do to work this out?" Meaning that maybe he was going to pay her some money for her silence in terms of not speaking to anyone or bringing attention to Phaedra in this particular scheme. What do you think about
If he did that, remember, we're getting a version of a criminal.
it?
If
Hmm.
he did that, what if he figured if I can shut her up and not involve Phaedra in any type of, because evidently Phaedra wasn't involved or she'd have been arrested. Feds don't care how many children you got, where you
Right,
live, what your name is. So
right.
evidently there was no evidence against her. But if he called her and said we can work something out, maybe he wanted Phaedra back. Maybe he was trying to look good to Phaedra.
Hmm. Okay,
Maybe Phaedra didn't even know he called her. We
okay.
don't know that. We can't just assume because he called her. Phaedra said call her. Phaedra didn't even answer her calls. Get mad if you want to. I don't care. I ain't got nothing to do with you, you criminal.
Okay.
So I'm saying innocent till proven guilty, and consider the source. Those were her children. She chose to align herself with Apollo and everybody else. And always remember the Fed's conviction rate, who got access to everything. If he would have called Phaedra on the phone, like they did Tim Norman on Sweetie Pie, if he would have called on the phone, say, I got another car, I'm finna, they'd have knew about it. If he would have took that money in there and say, here, we're going to buy this here and buy everything that he bought, they took it. They didn't take her house. They ain't take her license. They ain't take nothing that belonged to Phaedra. So something ain't right with this. Angry, jealous, been did wrong. I sympathize with her, but I can't pay for your mistake. It was your choice to be a criminal. Nobody held the gun to your head and forced you to do it. You chose to be a criminal with children.
Yeah.
With children. Everything your children suffered while you were gone is on you.
Yeah.
Phaedra didn't leave her kids, but you left yours.
I love that perspective. I do. I'm looking at it both ways. I'm trying to be fair on both sides. Okay. I'm trying to be fair on both sides.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Caramel, for having. And I enjoyed your reading too.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. Bye bye.
Have a good day.
You
All right,
too.
Miss Delilah. How you feel, Miss Delilah, about what we're reading tonight?
Hey, Caramel, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
So you done help me move out. I'm moving out my apartment. I'm listening to you through the whole thing.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad I can help you.
It was. I loved it. You did great. You know,
Thank you.
I done listened to you go pick up your son and everything. So I said, this lady, yeah, I've been with you for a while. You know, I just be in the background, whatever. But this was good because I've been following Angela Stanton King. I love her. Like, you know what I'm saying? I like her realness. I like her perspectives. I like her arguments. And I believe that with this story, I believe that Phaedra was always hating on her. I believe that, you know, Phaedra, you know, she has always been like a little manipulative. She was raised in the church. You learn how to pretend when you're in the church. It's a lot of pretending. It's a lot of, you know what I'm saying, secrets and stuff like that. So she's like, you know, when she got pregnant by Apollo and she lied and said that she didn't get pregnant to her mother because, you know, she didn't want to look like the floozy that she really is. Remember, she was sleeping in the trap house or the mattress on the floor with Apollo, and you know, try to make one, you know, to make it look one way. You know, I'm like, nah, this girl, she's the faces that she makes, she is a snake. And I believe everything that Angela Stanton King said. I think the only reason why Phaedra ain't get caught was because Angela was holding it down. You know what I'm saying? Like when you in that life, it's a difference. Like, you know, people come from, you know, different, you know, walks of life where they see things from their own, through their own lens. So me working on both sides of the fence, so you understand that they have like a code of like, you know, loyalty. You know, like back in the days, it was all, you know, we don't talk to police, we don't, you know, turn state's evidence, this, that, and the other. I believe that Phaedra did get caught, and she turned like opposition to feed the feds the information. You understand what I'm saying? And I believe that she really was jealous of Angela. I think that she has light skin envy. I believe, like, you know, with colorism, because look at Apollo. Like, she had them kids from Apollo because of the way he looked, because she wanted her kids to have a certain look, because she didn't have that look. You know what I'm saying? So I believe that Phaedra was, you know, she did, but because she had so much like education and everything like that, they found her to be valuable, and she been turned feds. That's why everybody got caught. She had people working with her at the law firm, but she didn't. Why she didn't help Angela? That just leaves you like you had to have some type of form of hate. It's just so many things that was said that you read in the book that align with what, you know, Angela said was true by me watching Phaedra throughout the years. Nene said that she didn't even like Phaedra. You know, everywhere that Phaedra goes, it's like everybody turns on her, and then Phaedra do some snake stuff, like what happened with Candy and Portia and them. She's always doing something snakish. So
Mm-hmm.
I believe Angela. I believe the book, you know, and that's my perspective on it.
Hey, I'll take it. You brought some very good points too. Some stuff I forgot about. I was like, damn, I forgot about that. You're right. But yeah, okay.
And I
You,
appreciate you reading the book. Thank you for that.
you
You know,
good.
I forgot about the book. Like I was listening to her when she was making arguments about, you
Mhm.
know, how they was doing things in California with kids being allowed to make decisions on if they want to do hormone replacement therapy, and how Trump
Mhm.
was against that, or how he was going to flip that, or this other stuff. So I
Yeah.
was listening to her before Biden even got in office and everything. So she, when he was running against him. But thank you, Caramel, for reading
No
the book.
problem. And you guys actually gave the idea to read the book because I was like, you guys want to y'all want to read the book? If so, I'll go ahead and purchase it and we'll read it. We're gonna read some more good books. So you guys give me some ideas of other books that you guys may want to read, and we'll definitely go check it out and we'll read because I love books. I'm always when I'm working, I like books on audio.
How many
Okay.
pages was that book?
This book was hold on. 424 pages.
And you read that in one day. You go, girl.
No. We did it right really in 3 days. I had to break it up. And I was trying to do
Oh,
it in
oh,
two
so
days, but I had to leave. I had to
oh,
leave and go and get my son. So yeah, what David when did we start it? Was it yesterday? Well, 2 days. We did it in 2 days.
I
Yeah,
swear
we
I
did.
thought you read the whole book today because I just flipped. I saw you was reading it. I said, oh, she's reading the book, and I jumped on. Thank you, Caramel. Let me
I
jot
did
it
it in
down.
2 days because we started it yesterday, but I did it in
I'm gonna have to
parts.
flip go back and read listen to yesterday's. Thank you.
Well, 2 days, 3 days, really 3 days because it's part three. So yeah, part three. Yeah, it's 3 days. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, thank you,
But
Caramel. Be
yeah,
safe.
so y'all give me some more. I appreciate you coming up. All right. Have a good day and good luck with your moving.
Thank you,
Um,
girl. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Later.
no problem. Okay, bye-bye. So yeah, y'all give me some more ideas. Like I said, I do like audiobooks. I like Zane. Y'all like Zane? I like a lot of Omar Tyree. I like a whole bunch of different types of books, different authors. I love stuff like that. So y'all let me know, child, because I love books. So y'all give me some ideas of books that you guys may want to read on here that y'all think is juicy and yeah, child. Somebody was snitching. Yeah, somebody snitched. I don't care what nobody say. Somebody snitched, and I feel like somebody snitched when they had that drop off where they went to Tennessee to go down there and trade them cars off to get that check. Somebody snitched because if they had done that many times and it wasn't a problem, why the hell was there questions being asked in that moment that never was asked before they actually got the check for said car? Something was going on there. Something was leaked to where somebody said something they shouldn't have said. I don't know if it was Phaedra. I don't know who it was, but something was kind of suspicious in that moment to where they wound up having to run up out of there and they got caught. So that's all I'm saying. And it all started with that situation. So, but and it's so crazy how a lot of this stuff that we're reading about in the book was actually on the show when I think back to it. Like I said, that white BMW was definitely the white BMW that they were talking about in this damn book. When she said Apollo pulled up in a BMW, that was the BMW, y'all. The one that you guys saw on the show that Apollo got into after he got that drill out on Phaedra on the show. So that's crazy how they were able to bring their criminal activities on to Real Housewives of Atlanta right up on our damn nose, and we didn't know a damn thing. We did not know a damn thing. Now I did, like I said with the car, the Mercedes that he was trying to give her, she turned it down. I thought that was suspicious, but at the time I didn't know all this was going on until I actually like started seeing stuff online, and then we read the book. But baby, I'm gonna see if she got like another book because this is child. If she got another juicy one, I'll be happy to read it. But you guys give me some great ideas of other books that you guys would want to. Somebody say I like Zane. Zane rocks. I love Zane, baby. Yes, girl. So y'all just let me know. Anybody else want to come up? I'll drop the link one more time, child. If not, I ain't gonna chat. Listen, I ain't gonna beg you now. If you want to come up, let's come on up and let's talk. If not, y'all gave some great perspectives too. The ones of you that came up, I appreciate that. Y'all big one on that. Anybody else? Nobody else? If not, girl, we're gonna get out of here. They said Phaedra probably snitched. I feel like Phaedra probably said something. That sounds like an inside job because it's no coinky dink. You ain't want to take my damn calls after that. That just seemed all of a sudden after you told me you got me. If we ever get caught, then I get caught, and damn, you ain't answer my calls. You don't change your number. All of a sudden when I come to your office to sit down and talk to you, all of a sudden you in a meeting and you can't talk to me. Okay, girl, you ain't heard from me or seen me, and I'm sitting right here, and you making it very impossible for me to have a sit down with you. Something's going on. But But thank y'all for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you guys stopping by for us to read this book. I told you we were going to do it. Shout out to Scorpion Miss, my mod, for being here. Belle Wilson, Tyra, thank y'all all for modding. We got some new wrenches that we gave out. Rose Armstead, honey, and True TV Podcast. Thank you all for stopping by. All of my Carrot Millions, of course. I see you guys in the building. Thank y'all all for being here as well, supporting the book. All right, we're gonna do some more books, and we're gonna have some more great topics as well. I'll see you guys in the morning for Car Chronicles. And if that's it, child, please don't forget to like the video, share the video, and subscribe also to the channel. All right, if nothing else, honey, let's go.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 yo, go. Hustle hard, hustle every single day. I'll be making moves till I'm buried in my grave. To the system, I don't wanna be a slave. I've been doing shit my way, or the highway. And in the driveway is a nice range. Cause I grind through the climb, I invite pain. You'll never hear me, bitch, nah, I don't complain. Just gotta flip the switch and you can go and obtain anything you want, anything you need. Your mind's got the key ingredient, it's belief. They'll deceive with the negativity, but I just